We have to stop pointing fingers and start locking arms. It is time to turn the page on the drama and the conflict, the fear and division. It is time for a new generation of leadership in America.
This election is a choice between whether we will have 4 more years of gross incompetence and failure, or whether we will begin the 4 greatest years in the history of our country.
Presidential candidates deliver their final arguments on why they should be the next president of the United States. The 2024 presidential election will be one for the record books. Thanks so much for joining us for this In the News Now election special. I'm Jonathan Martin. Well, Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump each vying to become the next commander-in-chief. Millions have already turned out in droves to vote early, breaking records in many swing states. 40+ million Americans have already cast their ballots ahead of Election Day. For reference, more than 150 million total ballots were cast in 2020. Early voting skyrocketed that year and was largely dominated by Democrats, but the margins could be closer this time around. Both sides urged their supporters to get out and vote early.
You know, Georgia started early voting and they broke historic records in early voting. North Carolina started early voting, broke historic records in North Carolina. Producing records. So we are going to break some records here in Detroit today.
So if you have a ballot, return it immediately. Get everyone you know to get out and vote. We don't want to take a chance. We can't lose this country.
Well, some of the key issues for voters this time around: the economy, border security, and reproductive rights. Rochelle Alien has more from Ohio.
According to recent Pew Research, the top issue bringing people to the polls is the state of the economy. After that, the issues vary widely based on who the voter is backing for the White House. The top 2 and 3 issues for Trump supporters are immigration and violent crime. Harris supporters reported health care and Supreme Court appointments as theirs. We wanted to check in with 2 groups to see what issues were top of mind for them. First up was young voters.
My name is Ellie White. My name is Joy Obiri.
And we found that a hot topic was reproductive rights.
Women's rights in general and reproductive health are the main things I'm looking at this election because I feel like it's something so crucial right now.
Affirmative action and the Israel-Palestine conflict were also mentioned. But another issue that proved to be popular was their perceptions of each candidate's morals.
I would say one big factor for me is overall character of candidates. I feel like a person's character speaks a lot in what they would do in a position of power.
For me, a big thing is like making sure that like the person that we put in office is like a good representation of what we as a country like look for and like represent.
Across town,
we use this place right here to come together as men, and then we talk about things.
We checked in with a local barber who's mixing haircuts and civic education by talking politics with his clients and even registering them to vote. He says a hot topic for his mostly black male clientele is connected to finding balanced and accurate information on each candidate.
I think that a lot of disinformation around things about Kamala Harris.
The second hot topic for his clients revolves around money.
Those too that say, well, you know, I'm in this higher tax bracket, but what about your cousins? What about your sisters, your relatives? They're not there, but you know, you're gonna just vote for somebody because they give you a tax break?
In Columbus, Rochelle Aline, 10 TV News.
The race for the White House looked a lot different just 4 months ago. So how did we get here? Before the summer, President Joe Biden was seeking re-election. And by the end of the summer, Vice President Kamala Harris had accepted the Democratic nomination for president. Isabel Lawrence has a look at how it all went down.
It started after the president received criticism following his debate performance against former President Donald Trump on June 27th. Shortly after, lawmakers on Capitol Hill began calling for the president to end his bid, the first being Texas Representative Lloyd Doggett. Less than a week after the debate, reports began to surface that the president had private conversations about not seeking re-election. On Sunday, July 21st, the president made his decision to exit the race. And so the race began. Harris, the nation's first woman, first Black American, and first South Asian American in the VP position, became the Democratic presidential nominee and could make history in the same way if she wins the presidency.
The candidates crisscrossed the country, focusing in on key swing states: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. So what exactly are swing states? Well, swing or battleground states are those in U.S. presidential elections that could potentially be won by either candidate. These states are where presidential candidates tend to focus their energy and resources throughout the campaign period. Millions of dollars and resources have gone into making sure the election is secure. Amid unfounded claims of widespread voter fraud, we verify what systems states have in place to keep ineligible voters from casting their ballots. Ariane Till shows us the safeguards.
Verify has received dozens of questions asking how states stop undocumented people and other non-citizens from voting in federal elections. Using these sources, here's what we can verify. Under U.S. law, U.S. citizens are the only people permitted to vote in federal elections, which include elections for president and Congress. When a person registers to vote, federal law mandates they sign a form attesting to their citizenship under penalty of perjury. Anyone violating the law could face a fine, up to 1 year in prison, and deportation, plus the penalties of whatever state crimes they've violated. State departments of motor vehicles typically offer people the option to register or automatically register people to vote when they get a driver's license. A number of states allow non-citizens to obtain IDs issued by their DMV, but they have systems in place so those people are not also automatically registered to vote at the same time. Still, if somehow an undocumented person does end up registering to vote, there are other checkpoints to prevent them from casting a ballot. The National Voter Registration Act of 1993 requires states to routinely check their voter registration rolls for accuracy against various databases, including Social Security and felony records. So, if someone on their voter rolls doesn't have a Social Security number or they've committed a felony, they'd be taken off the rolls. And on Election Day, states have more protections against illegal voting. One of the more common practices is having a voter prove their identity and citizenship status at the polls by requiring an ID. Non-citizen IDs look different. In Illinois, for example, non-citizen driver's licenses say federal limits apply. Another safeguard available in some states on Election Day is the ability to challenge individual voters. Depending on the state, the challenged voter may have to verify their information, and their ballot may then be set aside for additional review. With your Verify, I'm Ariane Till.
Well, many people think their individual vote decides who becomes president, but that's not how it works. Lorenzo Hall breaks down the Electoral College.
Why does the United States use the Electoral College to pick the president? The Founding Fathers were split. Should Congress choose the president or should it be left to the people? The use of electors was the solution. When you cast your vote for president, you're deciding which electors will represent your state. The number of electors in each state is determined by how many seats in Congress that state has, and that number is based on the state's population. So for example, let's look at California. Every state has 2 senators, so right off the bat, that's 2 electors. California, the most populous state, has 53 representatives in the House, so the Golden State gets 55 total electors. Whichever candidate wins California will get all 55 electoral votes. There are 538 total electoral votes, 535 for the states and 3 for the District of Columbia. 48 states are winner take all. Maine and Nebraska give 2 electoral votes to the statewide winner and 1 for the winner of each congressional district. A simple majority of 270 electoral votes is needed to win. If neither candidate gets to 270, the House of Representatives will determine the president, but each state delegation, regardless of the number of electors, must vote as one. So there are only 50 votes up for grabs. The Senate will determine the vice president with a simple majority vote of all 100 senators. The popular vote winner has lost the Electoral College in 2 of the last 5 elections. This has prompted calls to switch to a popular vote system, but that requires a constitutional amendment.
Both candidates actively sought after support from the various communities that make up America. In the weeks leading up to Election Day, Trump held a roundtable discussion with Latino leaders in Florida, while Harris participated in an interview with Telemundo. Both understand the critical role the Latino community plays in the election. Karis Belger has more from Georgia.
We have volunteers right now that are knocking on the doors of Latino voters in Georgia.
Working with her colleagues at the Georgia Latino Alliance for Human Rights to get her community out to vote.
Politicians don't really try to reach out to these communities until election time to kind of get them and push them to be more civically engaged.
But she's hoping to see interest surge for this presidential race, especially with the frequent visits both candidates have paid to the Peach State.
And we see that it has to do a lot with just how much attention is given to Latinos and just how much they're reached out to.
Despite record turnout in early voting, Latino voters haven't kept pace. Out of the nearly 3 million people who have voted early, a little over 72,000 were Hispanic or Latino.
They have a lot going on. We don't want to necessarily assume that folks aren't wanting to do it. It might just not be possible for them to do it right now.
Jenny Castillo is hoping recent comments about Puerto Rico from a comedian at a Trump event in Madison Square Garden will increase those numbers. The incident prompted Puerto Rican performer Bad Bunny to throw his support behind Vice President Kamala Harris.
If you've ever heard of his music has been very much focused on what's happening in Puerto Rico.
It's one event, but she hopes it will encourage others to do their own research and get to the polls.
And I'm Dominican myself. I'm going to be very vocal about this because once they attack one of us, they attack all of us. A lot of campaigns are like, we know you're not a monolith, then why treat us like one? We are folks that are coming from many, many, many different communities and cultures, and we need to talk about all the issues, right?
In Atlanta, Karis Belger, 11 Alive News.
Leading up to the election, Harris and Trump scrambled to win over key constituents. Harris is courting black men and Trump talking to women. Harris announced a plan to give black men more economic opportunities, which includes forgivable business loans, the creation of more apprenticeships, and a boost in sickle cell research. Former President Trump courting women voters, calling himself the father of IVF. Both campaigns also turned to star power for a little help on the campaign trail, bringing popular political figures to musical artists to actors on stage. The goal to amplify their messages and reach broader audiences. By enlisting the star power of celebrities, they are aiming to leverage their influence and popularity.
Georgia's Secretary of State's office is fighting for fair and transparent elections, and that includes keeping a careful eye on what happens at the polls. Georgia uses poll watchers as part of that process. These are people who observe at a polling place on Election Day or during early voting. And they're allowed to get a behind-the-scenes look at the vote counting process. Georgia law lets each political party designate up to 2 poll watchers per precinct. Nonpartisan candidates get 1. Now, these are different from poll monitors. Those are usually people who are outside of the polling location, checking for long lines and issues outside. Now, you can't just walk up to the polls and claim to be a watcher. You have to complete specific training.
This information cycle was inundated with misinformation ranging from misleading videos to outright falsehoods. With the help of Verify, we were able to debunk false claims and keep our viewers informed and educated. Take a look.
Election Day is November 5th, but we might not know the final results until days later. That doesn't mean something went wrong. It's part of the normal election calendar. Some states take longer than others to process ballots, whether because of low staffing, rules on when they can start counting, or waiting for mailed ballots to arrive. We don't know for sure when each state will be done counting, but they do all have deadlines by which the results need to be finalized and certified. Some states require local elections offices to certify their results the day after the election. Others give them a month. Then the states usually have a few extra days to tally and certify the statewide vote. For presidential elections, federal law requires all states to certify their results by December 11th.
Several viral posts on social media warn voters that their ballot could be disqualified if a poll worker writes on it. The posts urge people to request a new ballot if that happens. We have received several messages asking if this is true. So let's verify. Can poll workers write on your ballot without disqualifying it? These are our sources. There are several reasons a poll worker may write on your ballot. Many are required by law, according to North Carolina's State Board of Elections. In some states, like Montana and South Dakota, ballots receive an official stamp. In others, like Arkansas, Minnesota, and Texas, election judges or election workers are required to initial or sign voters' ballots. Verify contacted elections officials in all 50 states and found that in at least a dozen, election workers write on or stamp some or all of their voters' ballots. None of the states that responded to us said a ballot would be disqualified if a poll worker writes on it. So we can verify, yes, poll workers in some states can write on your ballot without disqualifying it. But let's say there's some other stray mark on your ballot that stops the machines from tallying your vote. Rachel Ori, director of the Bipartisan Policy Center's Elections Project, says polling centers will have someone review your ballot by hand. If you're ever concerned about any writing or markings on your ballot, don't be afraid to speak up. Ask a poll worker for additional information. With your Verify, I'm Ariande Till.
Conspiracy theories about Dominion voting are back. Following the 2020 election, some people claimed the voting machine company rigged the election against Donald Trump. Those claims were debunked in court during a defamation suit that resulted in Fox News paying out a nearly $800 million settlement. But that hasn't stopped the spread of posts like this one, which claims to show evidence of Dominion's sinister intent is found in the company's logo. The actual logo is a red vote going in and coming out a blue vote, the post claims. So is that true? Let's verify. Our sources: AP photos of Dominion voting machines, Dominion voting, and the Internet Archive. The answer is no, this is not Dominion Voting's logo. You can look on their website right now and see it's simply a red ballot going into a red box. There's no blue ballot coming out the other side. We checked historical records of the website to confirm this has been the company's logo for years. And photos of Dominion voting machines dating back to 2019 show the same logo. The logo you see in this post is fake. It first spread back in 2020, and at the time, a Dominion executive told the website Check Your Fact, quote, "This is a doctored image." And a spokesperson for Dominion told Verify the claims are false, pointing out they had been debunked years ago. Disinformation about voting systems has become increasingly common, so when you see claims like this, be sure to double check the source before sharing. With your Verify, I'm Casey Decker.
This viral video, with more than 100,000 views, claims to show a Bucks County, Pennsylvania election worker destroying ballots for Trump.
Donald Trump.
But is this video legit? Let's verify. Our sources are the Bucks County, Pennsylvania Board of Elections, the Bucks County Republican Committee, Pennsylvania State Law, and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. The Post claims the video was recorded in the Philadelphia suburb, but election officials there say the video is fake and shows clearly not authentic materials belonging to or distributed by the Bucks County Board of Elections. The local Republican Party and attorneys for the Trump campaign agree, determining that the video is fake, noting the mailing envelopes are all missing return addresses and the ballot envelopes are glossy, unlike those that the county really uses. A spokesperson for the Board of Elections tells Verify all mail-in ballots are kept sealed and under 24/7 surveillance until the morning of Election Day, when state law says they can begin counting them. So, no, this video does not show a Pennsylvania election worker destroying ballots for Trump. Law enforcement is investigating the source of the clip, but federal officials are warning that foreign actors, including Russia, Iran, and China, are expected to continue undermining Americans' confidence in the election, especially through disinformation campaigns on social media. If you see a viral video you want us to look into, just tag us in it at Verify This. With your Verify, I'm Brandon Lewis.
Americans can now legally bet on political elections. It has become a popular topic on social media, and billions of dollars are being wagered on the outcome of the presidential race.
I don't think I would bet on an election. It seems like it's not really right.
I don't gamble, number one, and it seems to undermine our democratic process.
Millions of dollars are being poured into political prediction markets, trading platforms where bets are placed on the outcome of the election, among other popular races.
It's like the stock market. You know, as a candidate becomes more popular,
the price on them will increase.
At one point during the campaign, the odds were 60-40 in favor of former President Donald Trump winning over Vice President Kamala Harris, according to Kalshi, an online platform where users can bet on the outcomes of future events.
If you look at sort of the average of polls that are coming out, whether it be in the swing states or sort of at a national level, a lot of the little leads that are given either to Harris +1, 2 point here, to Trump 1 + 2 point there, all really fall within the margin of error in a lot of these samples, right? So we don't really know if it's swinging one way or another.
So while political prediction markets are becoming a popular way for forecasting upcoming elections, experts say it's important for voters to look at the entire picture. People in Idaho are being asked to decide something that we're told will fundamentally change politics in that state. Voters are being asked whether they want to open Idaho's primary elections and decide general elections by way of ranked choice. Our colleagues at KTVB explained how it works.
It's Election Day at KTVB. Polls are open, where all of our employees
So I just have to see their ID and then I give them a ballot?
have been invited to participate
I don't have my ID, but I will. Wow, okay, you're gonna have to sign an affidavit.
in a very serious experiment. 5 choices in each of ranked choice voting. You pick 1 through 5. Our ballots consist of 5 candidates in 2 separate races. Bubble it in like a regular election.
Thank you, Rachel.
Return the ballot to the box.
Lisa has voted.
Ranked choice voting,
instead of just selecting one candidate that you prefer over all the others, you are ranking them.
is a component of Proposition 1,
You're just gonna rank them 1 through 5 for both?
a voter initiative on Idaho's statewide ballot this November that would also open up the primaries and change the way we vote in the general election.
So you're selecting your most preferred candidate first, your next most preferred candidate second, and so on and so forth until you don't feel like including any more candidates, or you can rank all of them if you really want to.
To show how it would work, our voters, Bradley has voted. Thank you. Are deciding on what to drink.
1 is your favorite, 5 is your least favorite?
And what to eat for lunch.
I'm going for tacos. Am I allowed to tell you that?
All right, Mark has voted.
And after 30 minutes, we had a pretty good turnout, I think.
Pop them in here.
We had better
Jason has voted.
than 40% participation.
Yay. Thank you.
And 80 ballots to tally. First, 1 for pizza. We counted all the first choice votes. 1 for tacos. Tacos took an early lead. Another for tacos. Another for tacos. Over hamburgers, salad, pizza, tacos, and sandwich. Sandwich. Meanwhile, water, 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 water was the immediate frontrunner. Water for drinks. Water, water, water. A lot of boring people. That was over Pepsi, 7-Up, and 3 others. Dr. Pepper, water, Coca-Cola. 1 7-Up. Even though H2O, 18, 19, and 20.
That's what we got.
Was way ahead. It was 1 vote shy of the 50% plus 1 it needed to win.
If you've got
So, we asked Dr. Charles Hunt, are you familiar with ranked choice voting?
Quite.
A Boise State political scientist who teaches ranked choice voting to college kids.
It's a fairly popular reform right now, and so yeah, I try to keep up on how it's going in other places.
To help us figure out a favorite. People say this is confusing if you had more than, say, 5.
If you've got like 30 candidates on there, right, then sure, that could get confusing. Probably most people are not going to be ranking all 30. Is it confusing with 4? I don't think it has to be that confusing, and research has shown that voters get used to this. They learn about it pretty quickly, and the confusion doesn't tend to linger for too long.
To go from 5 candidates to 1 winner with a simple majority, it's a simple system.
So the tally.
First step, we take the look to who finished last, which would be 7-Up.
Okay, so what do we got for 7-Up?
And we throw that one out and we take their second choice.
Yes.
And give it to somebody else.
Yeah. So who did our 7-Up? Our
7-Up's second choice was Coca-Cola. So if you want to mark down to Coca-Cola.
So let's do that. So we'll add a vote here for.
Do we cross 7-Up out?
And we can. They're out of the running.
They're out of the running.
Still not a predominant winner.
Okay. So now, what do we do?
We got to go to our next lowest. So Pepsi now is the lowest vote getter. We already know they're going to be out of the running, but we got to look at these 4 votes to see who their second choice votes were.
This one would be, second choice would be Dr. Pepper.
Okay.
Okay. This one, second choice is water.
So that's going to be it.
Dr. Hunt says it's common for the early favorite to eventually wind up winning. So now let's do food, lunches. While tacos look like it would easily take the win, it only got 16 first choice votes. So, following the same process of eliminating the lowest vote getter, salad.
Yeah, we got to stay healthy other ways, I guess.
Not a lot of salad lovers here. Okay, and looking at the salad lover's second choice, tacos got 2 more and sandwiches got 1. But still not enough to push either one over the top, which brings us to the next lowest. 5 first choice votes for hamburger puts 2 more toward pizza and 3 more in tacos total. Second choice, tacos.
That's it.
That's it. We finally have a winner.
We can keep counting if we want, but now, like we did with water before, now tacos is past that 50% threshold. Doesn't matter what the rest of the votes say at this point.
Tacos and water. What most KTVB voters wanted in the first place, or second.
Like ranked choice voting is designed to produce a winner that has majority support, right? In some fashion through either first place votes or second or third place votes.
Sierra has voted.
You have a clearer and more nuanced way of reflecting your preferences.
And thank you for voting, sir.
Many Americans will be glad when the election is over because it is stressing a lot of people out. A new study by Secret Nature found about 1 out of every 3 people reported stress because of the general election. That's on top of 1 in every 2 people who admitted to arguing with family members over politics. That stress is heightened during the holidays following an election. And when it comes to family, 7 out of every 10 people say their biggest cause of stress is a family member supporting a different candidate. So if that's you, experts say it's best to avoid politics, but if it does come up, try to find common ground and offer your perspective in a kind and thoughtful way. On Election Day, stay informed. Follow credible sources like the local news station you're watching right now for updates on candidates and ballot measures, and engage with the local community discussions to understand the issues at stake. Thanks for watching. We leave you right now with some of the lasting images of the presidential campaign of 2024. I'm Jonathan Martin. Have a great day.
Several viral posts on social media warn voters that their ballot could be disqualified if a poll worker writes on it. The posts urge people to request a new ballot if that happens. We have received several messages asking if this is true. So let's verify. Can poll workers write on your ballot without disqualifying it? These are our sources. There are several reasons a poll worker may write on your ballot. Many are required by law, according to North Carolina's State Board of Elections. In some states, like Montana and South Dakota, ballots receive an official stamp. In others, like Arkansas, Minnesota, and Texas, election judges or election workers are required to initial or sign voters' ballots. Verify contacted elections officials in all 50 states and found that in at least a dozen, election workers write on or stamp some or all of their voters' ballots. None of the states that responded to us said a ballot would be disqualified if a poll worker writes on it. So we can verify, yes, poll workers in some states can write on your ballot without disqualifying it. But let's say there's some other stray mark on your ballot that stops the machines from tallying your vote. Rachel Ory, director of the Bipartisan Policy Center's Elections Project, says polling centers will have someone review your ballot by hand. If you're ever concerned about any writing or markings on your ballot, don't be afraid to speak up. Ask a poll worker for additional information. Several people on social media have warned against using Sharpie markers or pens on ballots, claiming they could bleed through the ballot and invalidate a person's vote. Some have even claimed that the markers are a sign of election fraud. These warnings have led people online to ask whether they can use a Sharpie to fill out their ballot. So let's verify. Can you use a Sharpie to fill out your ballot? These are our sources. Yes, you can use a Sharpie to fill out a ballot. In fact, some election officials recommend it. The Michigan Department of State says using a Sharpie permanent marker to mark a ballot will not invalidate or cancel a ballot or vote. And election officials say many voting machine manufacturers, including Dominion Voting Systems, actually recommend Sharpies over standard ink pens because they dry quickly and the machines can read their ink better. The claims about Sharpies as a sign of election fraud are unfounded. Arizona Attorney General Mark Brnovich launched an investigation into the use of Sharpies during the 2020 election, but ultimately found that it did not result in disenfranchisement for Arizona voters. With your Verify, I'm Ariande Till.
Conspiracy theories about Dominion voting are back. Following the 2020 election, some people claimed the voting machine company rigged the election against Donald Trump. Those claims were debunked in court during a defamation suit that resulted in Fox News paying out a nearly $800 million settlement. But that hasn't stopped the spread of posts like this one, which claims to show evidence of Dominion's sinister intent is found in the company's logo. The actual logo is a red vote going in and coming out a blue vote, the post claims. So is that true? Let's verify. Our sources: AP photos of Dominion voting machines, Dominion voting, and the Internet Archive. The answer is no, this is not Dominion Voting's logo. You can look on their website right now and see it's simply a red ballot going into a red box. There's no blue ballot coming out the other side. We checked historical records of the website to confirm this has been the company's logo for years. And photos of Dominion voting machines dating back to 2019 show the same logo. The logo you see in this post is fake. It first spread back in 2020, and at the time, a Dominion executive told the website Check Your Fact, quote, "This is a doctored image." And a spokesperson for Dominion told Verify the claims are false, pointing out they had been debunked years ago. Disinformation about voting systems has become increasingly common, so when you see claims like this, be sure to double check the source before sharing. With your Verify, I'm Casey Decker.
Social posts warning against voter fraud are calling on state election officials to clean up voter rolls by removing ineligible people from their records. But do election officials already do this? Let's verify. Our sources are the National Voter Registration Act, the Help America Vote Act, the National Conference of State Legislatures, the Electronic Registration Information Center, and various state election laws. In every state except North Dakota, state election officials maintain a list of registered voters. The post suggests those lists are improperly maintained, which could allow people to illegally cast a ballot. But federal law requires states to regularly update their lists. This includes removing people who are ineligible or disqualified from voting, such as people who moved, died, have a criminal record in some states, or are improperly registered. Most states use Social Security records, change of address forms, and shared voter databases to do that at least every 2 months, although states can generally make their own rules about how often this happens, so long as it occurs in a uniform and non-discriminatory manner and not within 90 days of an election. When a state suspects a voter should be removed, but it's unclear if they're still eligible, federal law requires officials to send a notice and wait 2 general election cycles before removing them. So, yes, election officials are regularly cleaning voter rolls per federal law. North Dakota stands alone because it doesn't require voter registration. A study estimates nearly 3 in 4 Americans believe it's possible for someone else to find out who you voted for without your consent. 2 viewers reached out and asked us if that's true. So let's verify using these sources. They all confirm whether you voted is public, but who you voted for is not. All 50 states and DC either have laws or language in their constitution guaranteeing this. What is public is your name, address, party affiliation, and whether you voted in past elections. So, no, people cannot see who you voted for. Did you know that voter intimidation is illegal? It's true, according to these sources. Federal and state laws say it's a crime to intimidate or interfere with a person trying to vote. The ACLU explains this could be in the form of aggressively questioning a person's qualifications to vote, including citizenship status, spreading false information about voting requirements, or other forms of harassment, particularly towards non-English speakers or voters of color. Many states also ban items with a candidate's name because it could influence a person's vote at the ballot box. The ACLU says voter intimidation is rare, but if someone does try to interfere with your right to vote, you should report it to poll workers, local or state election officials, or the U.S. Department of Justice's Voting Rights Hotline. This viral video, with more than 100,000 views, claims to show a Bucks County, Pennsylvania election worker destroying ballots for Trump.
Donald Trump.
But is this video legit? Let's verify. Our sources are the Bucks County, Pennsylvania Board of Elections, the Bucks County Republican Committee, Pennsylvania State Law, and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. The Post claims the video was recorded in the Philadelphia suburb, but election officials there say the video is fake and shows clearly not authentic materials belonging to or distributed by the Bucks County Board of Elections. The local Republican Party and attorneys for the Trump campaign agree, determining that the video is fake, noting the mailing envelopes are all missing return addresses and the ballot envelopes are glossy, unlike those that the county really uses. A spokesperson for the Board of Elections tells Verify all mail-in ballots are kept sealed and under 24/7 surveillance until the morning of Election Day, when state law says they can begin counting them. So, no, this video does not show a Pennsylvania election worker destroying ballots for Trump. Law enforcement is investigating the source of the clip, but federal officials are warning that foreign actors, including Russia, Iran, and China, are expected to continue undermining Americans' confidence in the election, especially through disinformation campaigns on social media. If you see a viral video you want us to look into, just tag us in it at Verify This. With your Verify, I'm Brandon Lewis.
Election Day is November 5th, but we might not know the final results until days later. That doesn't mean something went wrong. It's part of the normal election calendar. Some states take longer than others to process ballots, whether because of low staffing, rules on when they can start counting, or waiting for mailed ballots to arrive. We don't know for sure when each state will be done counting, but they do all have deadlines by which the results need to be finalized and certified. Some states require local elections offices to certify their results the day after the election. Others give them a month. Then the states usually have a few extra days to tally and certify the statewide vote. For presidential elections, federal law requires all states to certify their results by December 11th. All but 4 states allow for early voting in person, some as early as 46 days in advance, others only a few days ahead of Election Day. In 8 states plus DC, voting is primarily done by mail. All 50 states allow some form of mail-in voting via absentee ballots, which could allow you to vote early. Most will send one to any voter who requests it, but 15 require a specific excuse, though it can be something as simple as not being in town on Election Day. Deadlines to request absentee ballots range from 3 weeks before the election to the day before.
Welcome to our special election edition of Verify This. I'm Brandon Lewis, and along with my co-host Adian Daytil and the rest of the Verified team, we're going to cover some of the biggest topics for voters this election cycle. On the economy, we break down what Vice President Kamala Harris's, quote, unrealized gains policy would mean for the average American, and which administration actually capped insulin costs.
I did the insulin.
We capped the price of insulin at $35 a month.
With illegal immigration a top issue for voters, we show you what measures are in place to keep undocumented citizens from voting in this election.
Plus, they're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
We traveled to Springfield, Ohio to find the origin of this false claim about Haitian migrants.
It appears to have started in a local Facebook group and then gained traction during an August 27th Springfield, Ohio commission meeting.
We also dig into Project 2025, the controversial initiative that outlines a political agenda for the next conservative president. We verify whether it calls for eliminating agencies like FEMA and answer your questions about what policy proposals the initiative actually does and doesn't recommend. And finally, we look into what election rules candidates have to abide by, like whether campaign ads actually have to be truthful.
Join us for the next 30 minutes as we cover these questions and much more in our special election episode of Verify This. First up, the economy. We've received lots of questions about Vice President Kamala Harris supporting a tax on unrealized gains. Some have claimed the policy would force average Americans to pay taxes on the increase of their home's value, even if they don't sell their home. Let's bring in Casey Decker to see how this proposal would affect you. Casey, let's start by explaining what unrealized gains are.
Yeah, it's the increase of an asset's value since you acquired it. Like your home. If you purchased it for $200K and it's now worth $300K, that's an unrealized gain of $100K. Once you sell the asset, the gain becomes realized, and that's when you typically get taxed.
So what is Harris proposing? Because there are a lot of people posting on social media that her plan would force people to pay taxes on the increase in value of the home they're living in, even if they don't sell their home.
Almost all Americans don't have anything to worry about. Her plan only applies to the ultra rich, people with a net worth of at least $100 million. They would have to pay a 25% tax on each year's increase in their wealth.
So for perspective, how many people are we talking that would be impacted here?
We're talking about the wealthiest 0.01% of Americans, so less than 10,000 people. For the vast majority of Americans, this tax wouldn't affect them.
Casey, thanks so much for clearing that up for us. Let's turn now to one of Trump's proposals. You've heard him speak often about adding tariffs to goods that are made outside of the United States, especially China. Several of you asked what that could mean for prices on everyday items, so we reached out to economists to help explain. During the presidential debate, the candidates discussed Donald Trump's plan to increase tariffs on imported goods. He's proposing a 60% tariff on items imported from China and a 10 to 20% for all other countries. Trump claimed his proposal won't affect the price you pay at the store, but Kamala Harris said it would.
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years.
Several Verify viewers asked if Trump's plan would raise costs for Americans. So let's verify. Our sources are the Council on Foreign Relations, the Tax Foundation, the American Action Forum, and the Center for American Progress Action Fund. Tariffs are taxes that the government imposes on imported goods. Here's how they work. Let's say an American store buys shirts for $10 in Vietnam and sells them for $12 in the US. Under Trump's proposed tariff, the business would pay an additional $1 or $2 to import the shirts. While the importer could absorb the cost, economists say it's more likely the business will sell the shirts for up to $14, passing the cost on to the consumer. Estimates by policy experts vary, but Trump's tariff proposals are generally expected to cost a typical household between $1,700 and $6,000 annually. So, yes, Trump's proposed tariffs would likely raise costs for Americans. Joe Biden faced similar criticism earlier this year from fellow Democrats when he imposed increased tariffs on some Chinese goods, including solar panels and electric vehicles. We've all seen the cost of everything go up, and medical expenses and prescription drug prices are no exception. Both Harris and Trump say they're trying to help seniors save money by capping the cost of insulin at $35.
I did that. I did the insulin.
We capped the price of insulin at $35 a month.
Viewers Debbie and Marianne asked us who really deserves the credit. We checked with these sources, and here's what we found. In 2020, Trump signed an executive order that implemented a 2-year cap on the cost of insulin at $35. The cap applied to around 800,000 seniors who pay for optional Medicare Part D coverage. 2 years later, Biden signed the Inflation Reduction Act, which made Trump's cap permanent and expanded it to include nearly 2 million additional seniors who are enrolled in Medicare Part B coverage. So while Trump's cap was first, Biden expanded it to cover more seniors. Coming up on Verify This, we answer your questions on immigration, including whether Harris was really in charge of border security and immigration policy. Welcome back. Another hot topic this campaign season is immigration. Many Republicans say Harris is President Biden's border czar and imply that she's in charge of security and immigration policy at the southern border and largely responsible for the recent influx of migrants. We checked with these sources, including the White House's original root causes strategy from 2021, and found claims that Harris served as Biden's border czar, overseeing security at the border, are misleading. Harris was tasked by President Biden with addressing the root causes of migration from 3 Central American countries, none of which border the U.S. She led a diplomatic effort in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras to create job opportunities, support education, and combat human trafficking. This is not the same thing as overseeing security at the border, which is the job of Homeland Security. And it's difficult to quantify whether her efforts actually made a difference in curbing the number of people coming to the U.S. from these countries. Another question that dozens of you reached out about is whether undocumented people in the U.S. are casting ballots in this year's election. So we asked Ariane Till to explain how states prevent non-citizens from voting in federal elections.
Border security and immigration have been among the most talked about issues in the lead up to the presidential election, and some have linked those issues to voting, including former President Donald Trump, who said that Democrats want to sign undocumented immigrants up to vote.
Our elections are bad, and a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote.
Verify has received dozens of questions asking how states stop undocumented people and other non-citizens from voting in federal elections. Using these sources, here's what we can verify. Under U.S. law, U.S. citizens are the only people permitted to vote in federal elections, which include elections for president and Congress. When a person registers to vote, federal law mandates they sign a form attesting to their citizenship under penalty of perjury. Anyone violating the law could face a fine, up to 1 year in prison, and deportation, plus the penalties of whatever state crimes they violated. State departments of motor vehicles typically offer people the option to register or automatically register people to vote when they get a driver's license. A number of states allow non-citizens to obtain IDs issued by their DMV, but they have systems in place so those people are not also automatically registered to vote at the same time. Still, if somehow an undocumented person does end up registering to vote, there are other checkpoints to prevent them from casting a ballot. The National Voter Registration Act of 1993 requires states to routinely check their voter registration rolls for accuracy against various databases, including Social Security and felony records. So, if someone on their voter rolls doesn't have a Social Security number, or they've committed a felony, they'd be taken off the rolls. And on Election Day, states have more protections against illegal voting. One of the more common practices is having a voter prove their identity and citizenship status at the polls by requiring an ID. Non-citizen IDs look different. In Illinois, for example, non-citizen driver's licenses say federal limits apply. Another safeguard available in some states on Election Day is the ability to challenge individual voters. Depending on the state, the challenged voter may have to verify their information, and their ballot may then be set aside for additional review. Data doesn't back up claims of widespread voting by undocumented immigrants. The Brennan Center for Justice analyzed 23.5 million votes from the 2016 election, and only found 30 instances of non-citizens voting. And the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank, identified 129 proven incidents of non-citizens registering to vote or casting a ballot in the last 21 years. With your Verify, I'm Ariane Till.
One of the most viral claims of the year came during the presidential debate when Trump said Haitian migrants in Springfield, Ohio, were killing and eating pets.
In Springfield, They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
We checked with these sources and confirmed there is no evidence that this is happening. So, where did this rumor come from? We sent Verify reporter Colin Dorsey to Springfield to find out.
Karen Graves, a spokesperson for the city, told Verify there have been no credible reports or specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community. Rose Tamar Joseph, operations manager for the Haitian Support Center in Springfield, confirms.
All of those are rumors that we knew about it, like they just saw it on the social media. That's how we knew about it also.
So you're saying there's no truth to the claims?
No.
So we can verify that there is no evidence to support these viral claims. So where did it stem from? It appears to have started in a local Facebook group and then gained traction during an August 27th Springfield, Ohio commission meeting when a man who describes himself as a social media influencer brought up the claim without any evidence. With your Verify in Springfield, Ohio, I'm Colin Dorsey.
Coming up on Verify This, we take you through Project 2025, breaking down what it does and doesn't recommend. Plus, a look into what election rules candidates actually have to abide by this campaign season. Welcome back to this special election edition of Verify This. I'm Ariane Till. Thanks for tuning in. We're digging into a topic that touches nearly every major talking point of the presidential election, Project 2025, an initiative launched by the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank that outlines policies Heritage wants the next conservative president to enact. But what does Project 2025 really recommend? And is former President Donald Trump involved? We have team coverage to answer your questions about the scope of Project 2025. Let's start with Casey Decker to break down the key points you need to know about Project 2025.
It's quickly become one of the most talked about issues of the presidential election.
The Project 2025 plan is not a game.
Project 2025 has been going pretty viral.
Reproductive
900-page blueprint.
Our nation's sovereignty. Look into Project 2025.
But just what is Project 2025? The Verify team is here to answer some of your questions using these sources. First, some basics. Project 2025 is an extensive proposal to quickly enact dozens of conservative policy goals in the event Trump wins the 2024 election. The proposal is more than 900 pages long, addresses nearly every major issue from abortion to education, and is extremely detailed about how policies should be enacted, sometimes down to the exact wording of proposed executive orders. It was launched by a right-wing think tank called the Heritage Foundation, with support from many other conservative groups. But does it have the support of Donald Trump? Not directly. In a post on Truth Social, Trump explicitly distanced himself from the project. Quote, "Some of the things they're saying are absolutely ridiculous and abysmal." But the majority of the project's authors are former Trump staffers, and many of the policy goals stated in the document overlap with those in Trump's own document called Agenda 47. The Heritage Foundation has led similar projects before, releasing detailed policy proposals for Republican presidents dating back to Reagan. So, why is Project 2025 getting so much more attention than their previous plans? A big reason, a bold new tactic the authors propose to more quickly accomplish their goals if Trump wins. The authors argue that in Trump's first term, he didn't enact as many conservative policies as he wanted because federal employees worked against him or generally slowed his progress. So the plan proposes to fundamentally change the way parts of the federal government are run. Federal agencies are led by political appointees, people handpicked by the president. But the agencies are staffed by civil servants, millions of subject matter experts who can only be hired or fired based on merit, according to a long-standing federal law. Civil servants stay in their roles as presidents come and go, assuring that agencies from the FBI to the CDC don't have to be built from scratch every 4 years. But just before he left office, Trump signed an executive order that tried to reclassify tens of thousands of civil servants as political appointees to make them easier to fire. The order was challenged in court, but Biden was elected and repealed it before those cases were settled or the order could take effect. A central tenet of Project 2025, bringing that order back. The authors say they're working on a conservative LinkedIn, a database of potential workers who Trump could immediately hire to replace career civil servants and who would be more eager to enact and enforce his agenda. But it's unclear how easy that would be for Trump to do logistically and legally. Which brings us to our next question. Can all the policies be enacted on day one? No. Many of these proposals would require an act of Congress. That makes a lot of them pretty much impossible unless Republicans also win a majority in the House and a supermajority in the Senate.
Thanks, Casey. In the wake of Hurricanes Helene and Milton, we have received many questions about how Project 2025 could affect various government agencies that handle natural disasters, including FEMA, which provides funding for disaster recovery and relief. Verify's Brandon Lewis looks into claims that Project 2025 would eliminate the agency.
We read through Project 2025 and found it doesn't call for eliminating FEMA, but it does call for big changes in how the federal government distributes relief funds. Today, local and state governments respond to disasters first. If they get overwhelmed, the governor can ask the president to declare a federal disaster, which triggers help from FEMA. Typically, the federal government pays for 75% of disaster-related expenses, and local governments pay 25%, although the federal share can be higher during severe events. Project 2025 recommends flipping the arrangement, so the federal government pays 25% and local governments pay 75%, although it would allow the feds to pay more during major incidents. The authors argue their plan would incentivize state and local governments to be more proactive in preparing for disasters. So, no, Project 2025 doesn't recommend eliminating FEMA, but it would put more of the financial burden of disaster recovery on state and local governments.
Women's reproductive rights are one of the key topics pushing people to the polls this November. During the vice presidential debate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz claimed that Project 2025 would mandate a pregnancy registry. Casey Decker looked into what Project 2025 really says.
Their Project 2025 is going to have a registry of pregnancies.
This claim is false. Project 2025 wouldn't require parents to actively register pregnancies. Instead, it would require states to submit data about abortions, miscarriages, and stillbirths after they happen. Currently, some states voluntarily report some of this data to the CDC. And while Vance has connections to the authors of Project 2025, the campaign has repeatedly distanced itself from it. With your Verified, I'm Casey Decker.
So what are some things Project 2025 does call for? Cuts to Medicaid, eliminating the Department of Education, the Head Start program, and the Department of Homeland Security, and reenacting Trump-era policies regarding border enforcement. Coming up, we know campaign ads are all over your television screens. We verify whether candidates are guaranteed equal airtime and whether these ads even have to be truthful. Campaign ads are dominating the airwaves right now, and some make pretty outlandish claims about the candidates. Several Verified viewers emailed asking if political ads have to be factually accurate. Using these sources, we looked into whether politicians are actually required to tell the truth in their ads. Here's Brandon Lewis.
The rules for political ads are very different than typical consumer products, and we want to be clear up front that the answer to this question is no. Political ads are not required to be factual in order to be aired on broadcast television. In fact, the law allows politicians to say almost whatever they want in a commercial. This is because political ads are regulated by the FCC, which applies just two rules. One is that all candidates have the same opportunity to buy commercial time on stations. And two is that politicians can say whatever they want. Accuracy is not one of the rules, although TV stations could run a disclaimer explaining the rules before airing an ad. The only consequence for politicians who produce misleading or false ads is in court, and that's only if they defame someone, which is rare and hard to prove.
I think the rationale behind it is what? The idea of saying that candidates get to say what they want, and what? The voters get to sort of, through the marketplace of ideas, decide what's true, what's false.
That marketplace could also include news stories or fact checks like Verify stories explaining what's true and false.
Sometimes you might see a lot more ads from one candidate than you see from their opponent. This raises a question that a lot of people have during the election season. Aren't candidates guaranteed equal amounts of airtime? Casey Decker joins us to discuss what the rules really are. Hey Casey, so what are the rules when it comes to giving equal time to candidates on TV?
Well, the Communications Act says that if a candidate gets airtime on a station, that station, quote, shall afford equal opportunities to all other such candidates for that office. In general, that means if a candidate appears on air for more than 4 seconds, their opponent must be given an opportunity to appear as well. But there are some big exceptions. Notably, news coverage and interviews don't count.
So then what does count?
Entertainment content. So for example, when Dr. Oz ran for Senate, he stopped making his show, in part because any station that aired it would have had to offer equal free airtime to his opponent. But there's another key limitation of this law. Notice it says equal opportunities, not actually equal time. So if a candidate buys an ad on a TV station for $1,000 in primetime, that station has to give their opponent the option to purchase an ad for the same price in primetime. But if the opponent doesn't want to buy that ad space, the station doesn't have to do anything else.
Do these rules also apply to all media, like cable TV, podcasts, or online publications?
No, this law only applies to broadcast stations, networks, and radio. So cable channels and the internet aren't affected by any of this. That means CNN, ESPN, Hulu, Facebook, none of them have to offer equal opportunities. For instance, a few months ago, Elon Musk interviewed Donald Trump on X. But under the law, he is not required to give Kamala Harris the option for a similar interview.
Understood. So that means no, political candidates are not guaranteed equal amounts of airtime. Casey Decker, thank you. Next, a lot of money has been raised this election season. Vice President Kamala Harris has reportedly raised $1 billion since entering the race. According to reporting from the New York Times, former President Trump has raised around $853 million this calendar year. We received questions about how campaign funds can be used, including whether former President Trump can use his campaign funds to pay for his legal bills. Brandon Lewis looks into what is legal under U.S. law.
Former President Trump has spent millions on legal fees to fight his recent cases. Several Verify viewers asked us whether Trump can use his campaign funds to help cover those bills. We used these sources and found the answer isn't straightforward.
The question of what's legal and illegal is not as clear as we'd like it to be. What I can say is, there are definitely ways for candidates to spend donor money on legal expenses that would not break the law.
The two main ways candidates fund their campaigns are with direct donations or money from political action committees, or PACs. The Brennan Center says almost all of Trump's legal fees are being paid with PAC money. These are funds from Trump-aligned groups like Save America or Make America Great Again Incorporated. Campaign finance law doesn't explicitly prohibit spending PAC money on personal expenses, including legal fees.
Under current law and under current guidance, Trump can use the funds from that leadership PAC to pay his legal expenses for personal matters.
The law is stricter when it comes to using campaign money. The Federal Elections Commission says candidates can only use campaign funds to cover campaign-related expenses, not personal ones. Campaign finance law spells out examples of personal expenses, but certain items like meals, travel expenses, and childcare can go either way. The FEC determines what counts as a personal expense on a case-by-case basis. This means Trump can use his campaign money for some legal bills, but only if it's directly related to his run for office. With You Verify, I'm Brandon Lewis.
We've fact-checked the issues, and now it's time to head to the polls. Casey Decker explains why you shouldn't think something's wrong if we don't know the results at the end of Election Day.
Election Day is November 5th, but we might not know the final results until days later. That doesn't mean something went wrong. It's part of the normal election calendar. Some states take longer than others to process ballots, whether because of low staffing, rules on when they can start counting, or waiting for mailed ballots to arrive. We don't know for sure when each state will be done counting, but they do all have deadlines by which the results need to be finalized and certified. Some states require local elections offices to certify their results the day after the election. Others give them a month. Then the states usually have a few extra days to tally and certify the statewide vote. For presidential elections, federal law requires all states to certify their results by December 11th.
On behalf of our entire Verify team, including my co-host Brandon Lewis, I hope you enjoyed the show and that you learned something new today. I'm Ariante Till. Now, there's bound to be lots of misinformation leading up to the election and even in the days after. So think twice before sharing a claim that isn't verified. You might just be sharing something that's intentionally deceptive. Now, if you're unsure about a claim, just send us a text to 202-410-8808, and we'll get right to work verifying whether it's true or false. Now, if you want even more fact checks, then head on over to the Verify This YouTube page. That's where you can find bingeable fast facts, extended interviews with our experts, and lots of fact checks. And while you're there, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching.
Election Day is almost here, and voters across Washington and Idaho will decide on several big issues and races.
I don't plan on changing any abortion laws when I get to Congress.
I am a big supporter of national security.
Before you fill out your ballot, we want to make sure you know more about the candidates you're voting for.
When I'm in Eastern Washington, I hear about three priorities. Number one, wildfires. Number two, wildfires. And number three, wildfires.
Eastern Washington, Central Washington, you don't have to explain to anybody the devastation of wildfire.
And what your vote means when it comes to statewide initiatives and measures.
This is the KREM 2 News Elections Guide.
Hello, and thank you for joining us on KREM 2 and KREM 2 Plus. I'm Mark Hanrahan.
And I'm Whitney Ward. In the next hour, we want to help you prepare for Election Day on Tuesday, November 5th.
Remember, you need to turn in your ballot by 8 p.m. on election night. If you're in Washington, you can mail it back or put it in a ballot drop box.
In Idaho, you will want to get to your polling place by 8 p.m. on election night.
There is a lot to vote on this Ballot, we want to start with the race for Washington's 5th Congressional District, which includes most of eastern Washington.
Now, this seat is open for the first time in 20 years after the incumbent, Kathy McMorris Rogers, announced she is retiring. The two candidates are Michael Bomgardner and Carmela Conroy. They both sat down with KREM 2's Amanda Rowley to spill the tea about who they are and where they stand on the important issues.
Well, Michael, thank you for joining us for The Tea with Amanda Rowley. So you can spill the tea on who you are. Happy to have you here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. So you are running for Washington's 5th Congressional District. Right out the gate, we want to know, why are you deciding to run in this race?
Well, it's a great question. You know, my wife and I, we have 5 little kids, and not just for our kids, but for everyone's children. We're just very concerned about the future of our country.
Now, a really tough question for you, though. What type of tea did you decide to sip on?
Well, I am having a low green tea.
And then kind of looking at your experience career-wise, you're currently serving as Spokane County's treasurer and spent 8 years as a Washington State senator. What is your proudest accomplishment over the years as an elected official?
Probably my favorite bill that we ever worked on was when we created the new WSU Medical School. So it was kind of a strange deal.
It's a big deal for the community.
It was. If you look at both between the two schools, there are more graduates of medical education here in Spokane than there are out of Seattle. And boy, we need them.
So Michael, what is the number one thing you would want to address as a congressman?
Well, I think the top issue facing our country right now is securing the southern border. What we need to do is kind of 3 things. One, we need to physically finish the border. Secondly, we need to return to the policy of what's called remain in Mexico or other countries, where before someone steps foot in the U.S., if they claim to be a refugee, that is determined before they get to the U.S. And then here in the U.S., we need to implement something called E-Verify, which is a documentation to prove that you have legal status to work.
So there's a study found this year that nearly 1/3 or 31% of Gen Z are living with their parents because they can't afford to buy or rent a home. So what steps would you take in Congress to help these young adults who are struggling to leave the nest?
That's a great point. You know, I mean, when we talk about the American dream, I mean, I want my kids to be able to afford their own home. We need to make increase housing supply. So here in Washington State, constrict housing supply where houses can be built. Planning is important, but you need to have that availability in that supply.
I understand you are pro-life. Would you support a nationwide abortion ban?
Yeah, so I don't plan on changing any laws when I get to Congress. You know, when I read the Constitution, and I've sworn an oath to the Constitution in the past, it says clearly that issues that are not in the Constitution are reserved for the states.
I want to get you to spill the tea here, getting into piping hot tea territory. So what do you say to your opponent calling you a career politician?
Well, I'm not a career politician. I was in the private sector after I left Harvard and worked overseas. I actually left my private sector career to voluntarily go to Iraq. So that's okay. But one of the longest career politicians in Eastern Washington was Tom Foley, and he had a pretty good legacy.
Well, thank you so much, Michael Bomgardner, for joining me and spilling the tea on who you are and give voters a chance to get to know you better.
Well, I appreciate it. It's hopefully we can come back and have some more tea in the future.
Always, yeah. Well, good luck in the race.
Thank you.
Well, Carmela Conroy, thank you for joining me on The Tea with Amanda Rowley to spill the tea on who you are and help voters get to know you better.
Thanks for having me, Amanda. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you. We're going to get to this tough stuff first. You got to tell me, what kind of tea are you deciding to drink today?
Well, Amanda, it's fall, and it's been feeling like fall, one of my favorite seasons here. And so I've got the orange cinnamon spice tea.
You're running for Washington's 5th Congressional District. Why did you decide to run for this race?
I've lived a life of public service, almost 30 years of apolitical public service, 4 years as a Spokane County Deputy Prosecutor, and then almost 25 years as a U.S. Foreign Service Officer. I feel like because I've got the federal experience, that it is something that I can sort of return to my community.
So what is the most important thing you would want to tackle in Congress if you're elected?
Well, I think job one, if a farm bill doesn't pass before the end of the year, is getting that farm bill going. I think the farm bill is what ties all Americans together, whether they're urban folks or rural folks, we all have an interest. We all agree that no family should go to bed hungry.
What do you think needs to be done in Congress to address inflation?
Some of what we can do is make sure that we, for example, restore some tax fairness.
Like what?
When working people say that they feel like they're paying too much in taxes, I agree with that.
Spill the tea. Where do you stand on immigration policy?
I am a big supporter of national security, and that ensures making that our borders are safe. I was very disappointed to see that the bipartisan bill that apparently was primarily drafted by a conservative Republican senator from Oklahoma didn't make it to the White House for signature. Our country needs security borders.
Where do you stand on abortion?
I believe that that should be a nationwide right, as it was up until 2022. They can't get those appointments in Idaho anymore, and so that means all of us, those of us who are nearest to our clinics in eastern Washington, have to wait longer to be able to get in and see a specialist.
Is there anything that you could foresee doing within Congress to address that increase in demand?
Well, sure. It would be to reinstate nationally a woman's and a girl's and anybody's right to make private decisions about their own lives.
Your opponent claims that your policies do not fit Eastern Washington and its values. Spill the tea for me, Carmela. What do you say to that?
I gotta wonder who he's talking to. Because what I'm hearing is that people really do want our freedoms to be protected. We are independent Westerners. We don't want the government up in our business.
Well, thank you so much, Carmela, for talking through
pleasure.
your experience and where you stand on things, giving folks an opportunity to learn more about you as their candidate.
I appreciate it. Yeah. Amanda, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now we need to learn more about these candidates by watching the KREM 2 5th District Congressional debate. It is the final time Ms. Conroy and Mr. Bomgardner will go head-to-head before the election. You can watch it streaming on KREM 2 Plus, and if you don't have KREM 2 Plus yet, download it now for free on Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV.
Still ahead on KREM 2 News, in our elections guide, we are taking a closer look at some of the initiatives on the ballot in Washington, including an effort to repeal the state's Climate Commitment Act. We'll hear from the key people for and against the initiative.
Plus, Washington will have a new governor for the first time in more than a decade. Coming up, the candidates make their case for your vote and explain why a recent poll isn't the final word in this race.
Obviously, we're pleased with the poll results, but we take any poll with a grain of salt, right? But rather be ahead than behind.
I have to smile at the polls because I've been there, done that, been behind before, and come back and won.
Welcome back to the KREM 2 News Election Guide. This year, Washington voters will decide on 4 statewide initiatives.
2 of them deal with climate change and energy issues. Let's take a closer look at what a yes or no vote would mean. Initiative 2066 would prohibit state and local governments from restricting access to natural gas. It would also prohibit the State Building Code Council from prohibiting, discouraging, or penalizing the use of natural gas in any building. The campaign was sponsored by the Building Industry Association of Washington, which says it protects the freedom of Washingtonians to have the clean energy of their choice. In March, the state of Washington passed a bill that prohibits any gas company with more than 500,000 customers from getting natural gas service if that service wasn't in place by 2023. A yes vote on Initiative 2066 means keeping the ability to use natural gas in the future. A no vote means eliminating that option for gas companies with more than 500,000 customers.
Initiative 2117 would repeal the Climate Commitment Act, a state law that provided for a cap and invest program designed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 95%. Supporters say the tax is what's making Washington's price of living the highest in the nation alongside California. Opponents say the program is the true solution to lower transportation costs by getting the state off of fossil fuels. So, a yes vote on I-2117 means eliminating the Climate Commitment Act, while a no vote will keep it in place.
Climate policy on the ballot this November.
There's been a lot of dishonesty in how this thing was rolled out.
Brian Haywood of Let's Go Washington is the driving force behind Initiative 2117 to repeal the Climate Commitment Act.
2117 is so shocking, it's so extreme, it needs to be defeated.
Reuben Carlisle is the former state senator behind the initial legislation. The initiative would end the state's cap and trade or tax programs, which essentially charge top polluters for carbon emissions to help fund state programs. But Haywood argues this is all driving up gas prices through hidden taxes. Carlisle says there's no evidence of that. In nearly 2 years, the state has made $2 billion. Carlisle points to losses of more than $5 billion if they're repealed. Polls show that convincing voters to repeal the legislation has been challenging.
Those who want to repeal some of these acts by the legislature have not really done much of a job to explain why the actions of the legislature should be reversed.
It's expensive to get measures on the ballot, and they haven't had the same amount of resources to push for their passage.
Haywood has brushed off criticism for not having a solution to what he insists is broken.
If I wanted to go and make the program, I would run for office. And that's not what I'm doing right now. I'm fixing something that is hurting everybody.
The initiative process is an important part of our representative democracy, our constitutional republic. So I have no problem stepping up and having a real conversation with the public.
And Washington State's top office is also up for grabs. Coming up next, we sit down with the two candidates for governor. Hear their plans to make sure Eastern Washington isn't forgotten in Olympia. Plus,
Proposition 1 is really a way to go back to a more open system.
If this were to come into place, we would completely and radically change our entire election system.
And it is one of the most contentious issues on Idaho's ballot. We'll explain what your vote on Prop 1 could mean for the future of elections in Idaho. This election, Washington will decide on a new governor for the state.
voters will choose between Democrat Bob Ferguson and Republican Dave Reichert.
Just a few weeks before the election, a poll from King 5, the Seattle Times, and the UW Center for an Informed Public showed Ferguson with a big lead, but also 16% of voters still undecided.
KREM 2's chief journalist Amanda Rowley pressed both candidates on those poll numbers, as well as issues important to Eastern Washington.
Obviously, we're pleased with the poll results, but we take any poll with a grain of salt, right? But rather be ahead than behind.
Come the election day, hopefully, millions of voters have spoken. And that's really the important poll, right?
Still, 16% of respondents remain undecided about the race for Washington's governor. Both candidates shared what they think is the most critical difference between them.
We can bring Washingtonians together. There's an opportunity here for us to have a moderate Republican governor who can work with a Democrat House and a Democrat Senate.
We're facing many challenges as a state. We need someone who can come into the governor's office and be a change agent to make improvements on public safety, homelessness, affordability, but at the same time defending our core freedoms.
How would you plan to engage with Eastern Washington residents?
You know, just like I was the sheriff for all of King County, I will be, as I was the congressman for all of the 8th district, I will be the governor for everyone in Washington state.
Does that come in the form of more often visits to Eastern Washington?
Yeah, I think you got to. Yeah, absolutely. I think you have to. It's not just visits, but you have to listen to people.
First of all, I've lived and worked on both sides of the mountains. Number two, when I launched my campaign, I literally launched it in Spokane. My second stop was the Tri-Cities. Only then did I come to the west side of the mountains. So I'm trying to communicate throughout my time as Attorney General and standing up for all Washingtonians, and in my campaign for governor, I plan to be governor for all Washingtonians.
Following Spokane County's two massive wildfires last year, homeowners have criticized the state's response. Ferguson says the state is doing better, but there's room for improvement.
I think we would all agree more needs to be done, in particular with victims, folks who are harmed. There's a human toll to what happens when it comes to fires. As a governor, we'll make sure we're helping those folks out.
Reichert believes the state should be doing more. He plans to make a deliberate and immediate effort to help wildfire victims.
We've got to get immediate assistance. It's an emergency management plan that should be in place that ensures that people get the help they need. as soon as possible.
Now, as for Washington state's gun laws, Ferguson maintains his support for banning the sale of assault-style weapons and what the state considers high-capacity magazines. Reichert doesn't believe those laws make a difference in the amount of gun crime in the state. Amanda Rowley, KREM 2 News.
And still ahead, should Washington state's long-term care benefit be optional? We'll take a look at both sides of Initiative 2124 before you cast your vote.
And an Idaho proposition could change the way the state votes. We'll break down what a yes or no vote means on Prop 1. Welcome back to our KREM 2 News Elections Guide. In Idaho, voters will decide on 2 statewide issues this year.
If passed, both of them could change the rules on voting in the state.
The Idaho Citizen Requirement for Voting Amendment would amend the Idaho Constitution to require a person to be a U.S. citizen in order to vote in elections in Idaho. Currently, Idaho law prohibits non-citizens from voting or registering to vote in the state for any state or local elections. In 1996, the U.S. Congress passed a law prohibiting non-citizens from voting in federal elections, including elections for the U.S. House, U.S. Senate, and presidential elections. This does not apply to elections at state and local levels. 16 municipalities across the country allowed non-citizens to vote in local elections as of December 2023. 11 were located in Maryland, 3 in Vermont, and 2 in California.
The initiative Proposition 1 would repeal the state's partisan primary system and replace it with a top 4 primary system where all candidates seeking that office appear on one ballot and the top 4 vote earners advance to the general election. Candidates would be able to list their party affiliation, but it would not mean they represent the party. Candidates would also not be required to list party affiliation. This primary system would be used at elections for the U.S. Senate, the U.S. House of Representatives, state legislature, elective state office, and county elective office. Supporters say every registered voter should have the right to vote in a primary, not just those who identify as Republican or Democrat. Opponents say replacing the system with the top 4 primary is overly complicated and unnecessary. They claim all that's needed for independent voters to have a voice is to change the primary system to an open one.
Supporters of Idaho's Proposition 1 say the ranked choice vote system will broaden voter access to participate in elections.
A major benefit of Proposition 1 and the top 4 open primary is that voters would be able to, vote for the person and not always the party. So they could choose to support the Republican they really like for the governor's race. They could choose to support an independent in their local legislature.
But those who oppose the initiative believe the current election system should remain in place because it is clear and transparent.
Right now, we have a system that is very fair because we have guaranteed ballot access for 4 political parties and independent voters. This completely tosses that notion out.
In Coeur d'Alene, Amanda Rowley, KREM 2 News.
Coming up next, as Washington voters decide on a new public lands commissioner, I sat down with both candidates to hear about their plans to prioritize wildfires in eastern Washington.
What we're living in and seeing are unnatural, catastrophic fires.
These aren't, I don't think, Western Washington or Eastern Washington issues.
On this KREM 2 News Election Guide special, we are breaking down the issues and people you are voting on this November.
One of the jobs up for grabs is Washington's Public Lands Commissioner. I sat down with each of the candidates to talk about their plans to specifically protect eastern Washington from wildfires.
Eastern Washington, Central Washington, you don't have to explain to anybody the devastation of wildfire.
My agenda is pretty simple. Number one, I want to, protect our clean air, clean water, and habitat.
What would you say are your biggest Eastern Washington priorities?
When I'm in Eastern Washington, I hear about 3 priorities. Number one, wildfires. Number 2, wildfires. And number 3, wildfires. We've got to continue to improve our work preventing wildfires. And this means doing more things like thinning, both commercial and non-commercial, prescribed burns in partnership with the community. And it also means continuing to improve our response and our recovery.
Making sure that we can suppress those fires when they start and as quickly as possible. But I want to continue the upland work of prevention. And that goes hat in hand with this. If you do one and not the other, you're just setting yourself up for failure. And my opponent right now is talking about taking land off the rolls in Western Washington. So he would say it doesn't impact our fighting ability. It directly impacts it, because if you take $2 billion worth of inventory off the rolls in Western Washington, that you better believe that's going to impact our ability to fight fires and do the upland work in Eastern and Central Washington.
So we've already done 800,000 acres. It's been tremendous. The places where that thinning and that work has been done, it has made a difference, but it's really a drop in the bucket when it comes to how much forest land we really do have. How do you do enough to make a difference?
That's a great question, and you're exactly right. So I want to also do some of that forest health work using federal money on some of the federal lands, because it's going to complement forest health priorities that we're doing and putting in place in Washington State on the trust lands.
We need to be strategic in pursuing federal funds. I'd like to actually designate a staff member in the Department of Natural Resources to work on federal government relations. I think we would get our money's worth. We also need to keep making the case to the state legislature.
How do you convince lawmakers how important it is to do the prescribed burning, the thinning, and the logging even?
Yep. There's 3 ways. One is the department generates revenue through our work. When we lease these lands for agriculture, we generate money. And then I think it's a matter of continuing to make the case that these investments in wildfire prevention are a good investment. They're good for public safety, they're good for our environment, and they save us money in the long run. We've seen, in the Spokane area, we've seen far too many times the cost of not adequately addressing in prevention. And, when we do it right, it works.
Proving to them that current science, is what we need to follow. It shouldn't be partisan. I don't even think this office should be partisan. Personally, I think it should be about getting results. So the message to them is, let's do this. Let's fight climate change. Let's do it by keeping our forests doing what they do best. They're carbon storage workhorses if they're healthy. Let's keep them healthy.
How do you balance the needs of Western Washington and Eastern Washington, knowing that they are very different?
One of the things I've found as I've traveled the state is, and I've been at this for a year now in small towns and rural communities, is a lot of the values and needs aren't as different as we think. Everyone values clean air and clean water. I think we all, whether you're in Eastern Washington or Western Washington, value recreation, whether it's horseback riding, hunting, fishing, backpacking, and these are universal.
We are a resource-rich state. We are amazing, actually. And we've been just beaten into this corner to think, oh, don't use it. That's how you protect it. But that's not true. The science around a well-managed piece of DNR land sequesters over 11 metric tons of carbon. That is more than any of the carbon projects that anyone has talked about so far in the state. So if we turn our forests into these carbon workforces, oh my goodness, we can do it. And that's the balance to me, is getting beyond the politics of this.
What do you say to people here in Eastern Washington who feel like their needs and their concerns are often forgotten from state office holders?
I think it's true. I agree. You need someone who's willing to value everyone on the same playing field. And that's something I have done. I think that perspective needs to be at the helm. If you're leading a 2,000 plus person agency, which is what this executive does, you need to have those perspectives on problem solving and working across the aisle and understand who your bosses are. They are the people of the state of Washington.
What is your message specifically to voters here in Eastern Washington?
I understand how important it is to meet our responsibility to keep these communities safe. My commitment is to follow the science, to be an independent-minded voice, to work in a bipartisan manner to address the wildfire challenges in Eastern Washington.
And you can watch my full extended interviews with both of those candidates right now on KREM 2+. If you're currently watching us on KREM 2+, just navigate to the top menu bar, select News, and then scroll down to find Politics Plus.
All right, coming up next, Washington voters will decide on the future of the state's long-term care program. We'll hear from both sides about what they say are the pros and cons of the Washington Cares Fund.
the language has become, frankly, horrific.
We are here to love. We are here to support.
And they may not agree on politics, but they still have a shared property line still ahead. Their lesson in being neighborly, regardless of who you're voting for.
Welcome back to the KREM 2 News Election Guide Special. I'm Whitney Ward.
I'm Mark Hanrahan. We now want to take a closer look at the final two initiatives on the ballot in Washington.
One would bring changes to the state's long-term care program, while the other affects a capital gains tax.
Initiative 2109 would repeal the 7% capital gains tax that comes with the sale of assets like stocks, bonds, or business interests with capital gains of more than $250,000. Supporters say the tax is a kind of income tax and that Washington has a long tradition prohibiting state income tax. But opponents say repealing this initiative would take billions of dollars away from childcare and education programs over the next several years. They say the law only affected 4,000 people in all of Washington last year. So, this election day, voting yes on I-2109 will get rid of the tax, and a no vote will keep the current funding measure in place.
Initiative 2124 would allow employees and self-directed workers to opt out of coverage under WA Cares, the state's long-term health care program. That program is paid for by a mandatory payroll tax and provides long-term health services, such as home health care or nursing home care, to qualifying individuals. Supporters say workers should have the choice to opt out of the program and may find private long-term care insurance a better deal. Opponents say millions of working Washingtonians are counting on the fund to pay for their care in case of injury, illness, or age, and voting yes would essentially repeal the program.
Kathy McCall recently moved in with her 87-year-old mom who has dementia. She's one of the 820,000 unpaid family caregivers in our state.
She has, challenges doing the basic things like making a sandwich or remembering what she was doing.
As the advocacy director for AARP Washington, she says 70% of us will need long-term care, something health insurance and Medicare won't cover. That's why AARP is among the more than 140 organizations fighting to protect WA Cares Fund.
7% of the population can actually afford long-term care. And so this program provides for middle-income families and for families that struggle to think how they're going to care for a loved one as they age or if they have a disability.
In July of last year, workers in Washington began paying 58 cents for every $100 they earn to WA Cares. People can receive up to $36,500 to pay for services like in-home care to help with cooking, bathing, or getting around the house. Benefits will be available after contributing for 10 years or 3 out of the last 6 years if you have a sudden need. People already close to retirement would get partial benefits. Workers had a small window to opt out, and nearly 500,000 people did by getting their own private insurance.
But if you look at who opted out, it was anybody that worked in a corporation that had a on-the-ball HR department that could help them get out. But that meant welders and gas station attendants and waitresses and anybody sort of in the service industry without that infrastructure is stuck in the program.
Brian Haywood with Let's Go Washington, which is behind Initiative 2124, believes voters should have a choice. Voting yes would end mandatory participation in the program, which he says hurts disabled workers who can't work enough hours to benefit, and women in particular.
If you're a woman and you graduate from college and you work for 9 years, you got to work 10. If you only work for 9 and you stop to raise a family for 5 years, you have to go back to ground zero and work another 10 years.
All of us, family caregivers. But opponents of I-2124 argue the initiative actually hurts women because many leave their jobs to care for loved ones. And making WA Cares optional will essentially kill the program.
This is not about an opt-out. It's not about choice. And in fact, they're taking away people's choices, their choice to determine how they want to use this long-term care benefit.
Now still ahead as voters get ready to choose a new representative for Washington's 5th Congressional District. We're sitting down with outgoing Congresswoman Kathy McMorris Rogers for an exclusive interview. What are you most proud of?
Oh, it's hard to nail down one thing.
But I hope that people see me as a representative that they can trust and that cared.
Now it feels like voters will hear why she decided to step away and what she says will be the biggest challenge for whoever takes over her seat. One of the most watched races in eastern Washington this year is for the 5th Congressional District.
Voters will decide between Republican Michael Bomgardner and Democrat Carmela Conroy. It'll be the first time in 2 decades the district has had a new representative.
It comes as Congresswoman Cathy McMorris Rogers is stepping down after a historic career in Washington, D.C. I sat down with her to talk about her 20 years as a lawmaker and the issues facing the district's new representative.
I'm really proud of what I've been able to accomplish on behalf of the people of Eastern Washington.
Why did you decide now was the time to step away? What made you decide not to seek re-election?
Yes, well, it was a tough decision, and there had been other times when I had considered not running for re-election. I never imagined that I would serve in Congress as long as I have, and there was going to be a new era in Washington, D.C., and I thought, you know what, this is just a good time for me to come home.
What are you most proud of?
Oh, it's hard to nail down one thing, but I hope that people see me as a representative that they can trust and that cared.
Politics has changed a lot in 20 years. Right now, it feels like voters on both sides share a lot of frustration. What is your message to voters here in Eastern Washington?
My message to them is that our form of government is unique in all the world. The United States, that leadership matters, American leadership matters. I want them to believe in the amazing institution of Congress, and this is it's especially important in representative government that they vote and that they make their voice heard, and never underestimate the power of a few people to make a difference.
What do you think moving forward will be the biggest challenges for the next person that holds this seat?
Oh, I think that I think it's just going to be the challenges of making sure that they listen to the people and learn these issues and take them back and serve the House of Representatives. I do remember when I was first sworn in.
Thank you, Eastern Washington. It is my honor to represent all of you.
And I looked over, across the House, and you're looking at 435 people, and just the reality of, okay, this is a lot of people to get to know. So you're building relationships, and that takes time. So that's one of the challenges. And then this is one of the largest districts in America. So traveling this district and getting to know people, but relationships are going to be most important for whoever serves in this position, both here in Eastern Washington and in D.C.
What's next for you? Where will we find you in January?
In January, I'm going to be home in Spokane, Washington, more present with my kids and my family, probably helping take the kids to all their activities.
What do you think that you will do? What's the next step for you?
Right. I'm still exploring what that looks like. There's a lot of different options, but it's going to mean I want to be here in Spokane and want to be involved in continuing to make a difference. My heart's full with gratitude. For me, it's been just an amazing journey to think, going from Kettle Falls, Washington as a farm kid, working alongside my brother and parents on our orchard and fruit stand, to serving in Congress all these years. It's just been an extraordinary experience. An honor for me to serve and represent the good people of Eastern Washington, and I cherish these years, and I'm very proud to have had this honor to serve.
And remember, you can learn more about the candidates seeking to become the new 5th District Representative right now on KREM 2 Plus. Download our free app to watch the final debate between Carmela Conroy and Michael Bomgardner. KREM 2 Plus is our new streaming app that you can watch on your TV. It's available to download right now on Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV.
Now coming up next, they share a property line, but not the same political views.
Hear how these neighbors remain friends during a divided election season.
Before Before we wrap up this election special, we want to introduce you to a pair of Spokane neighbors.
They have different political views, but as KREM 2's Tim Pham shows us, it doesn't mean they can't stay neighborly.
Bright orange and yellow leaves are signs of a new season. This time of year, you'll also find the colors red, white, and blue. Banners, flags, and the iconic political yard sign. You can't avoid them, just like you can't avoid your neighbor.
Hello, I'm Anita Sather, and I'm voting Democrat for the people.
I'm Cheryl McGrath, and I'm voting for conservative Republicans.
They may not share political beliefs, but they do share a property line. So I asked them to meet me in the middle for a conversation.
You have Harris wall signs. Why are you voting for Vice President Harris?
I believe that she supports loving everyone, having everyone get an equal chance.
Tell us why you are voting for former President Donald Trump.
I'm voting for former President Donald Trump because I do believe, again, that his policies strengthened America.
It's neighbor versus neighbor, or so you would think.
She's been really a blessing to me. You know, you have rough times, and I know I can always go over to Cheryl's house.
I think one of the most beautiful things about her is her heart. Even more than that is that she and I look different, we vote different, and we drink different wine.
We have quite an amount of honking and four-letter words outside of our house. Some for Cheryl, some for me.
We do bigger and better signs. That's how we jest.
You just wait, lady. You just wait. No, that was for Trump, right?
They can laugh about the noise and choose another four-letter word, love.
Yeah, we're confusing them to death.
We're confusing everybody.
Like,
what are they doing? I hear a lot of, oh my gosh.
I do too.
Can you even talk to her?
How can you be neighbors with a Trump supporter?
I know. Same here.
And how do we answer that?
I love my neighbor.
I love my neighbor. And I think they have a really hard time understanding that.
Back in the day, it feels like, you know, you voted for who you voted for, but you could still get along.
We just out-sign each other.
Exactly what I was going to say.
Each other.
If I see a sign going up, okay, I'll go buy another sign.
We are better because of our differences, and whether we vote differently or not, we still love each other.
Reporting in Spokane,
I love you.
Tim Pham, KREM 2 News.
And thank you for joining us for this KREM 2 News Election Guide Special.
If you have more questions about your ballot, we have more interviews and explainers available to watch right now on KREM 2 Plus. You can download it for free on Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV. You can also just text the word VOTE to 509-448-2000, and we will text you a link to our comprehensive voter's guide, and there you will find everything you need to know before casting your ballot.
If you need to check the status of your ballot or confirm your voter registration, you can do so in Washington by visiting votewa.gov. And be sure to join us on election night. We'll be live exclusively on KREM 2 Plus right after the polls close, bringing you the latest results from Washington and Idaho. I'm Mark Hanrahan.
Whitney Ward, don't forget to vote by Tuesday, November 5th.
Well, we are just minutes away from polls closing in both Washington and Idaho tonight. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for KREM 2 News on this election night. I'm Mark Hanrahan.
And I'm Whitney Ward. We are expecting to see our first results here in the local election within about the next 10 minutes. And in just about 2 minutes, we will be streaming live on KREM 2 Plus as those results start to come in tonight.
The big ones we are tracking: Washington governor, a U.S. Senate seat, 4 initiatives that could change state law in Idaho, or in Washington rather, and then all 10 congressional districts. We are tracking the race for Washington's 5th congressional district serving Eastern Washington. Republican Congresswoman Kathy McMorris Rogers is stepping down after 20 years.
Democrat Carmela Conroy and Republican Michael Bomgardner both are looking to replace McMorris Rogers, so we will be closely tracking the results in this race.
This election, Washingtonians are deciding on a new governor. Running for the seat are former U.S. Representative and 2-term King County Sheriff Republican Dave Reichert and longtime Attorney General Democrat Bob Ferguson.
And in Spokane County, Commissioner Al French is trying to defend his District 5 seat against challenger Molly Marshall. And this was an extremely tight primary between these two candidates, with French securing a very narrow victory by only about 700 votes. He has served as a county commissioner since 2011. And KREM 2's Amanda Rowley is live in downtown Spokane tonight. She just spoke to Commissioner Al French just a few moments ago. Amanda?
Yeah, Mark and Whitney, we are at the historic Davenport in downtown Spokane at one of the local Republican parties on election night tonight. As you mentioned, just spoke with Al French, running for his 5th election as Spokane County Commissioner. He told me he tends to see a trend with his voters that they vote late. So he isn't expecting to come ahead with the first round of initial results tonight. But regardless, he says his priority is public safety. Take a listen.
Continuing to work with the sheriff and sheriff deputies to make sure that our citizens are safe. That's been the number one priority. No matter what part of the district I've been in, public safety is number one.
Now, here at this Republican Party, we are expecting to hear remarks around the time that election results are dropped. We are expecting to hear from Congresswoman Kathy McMorris Rogers, as well as Republican candidate Michael Bomgardner. She will be introducing Bomgardner here this evening. We'll be sharing that here on KREM 2 News. So I'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
All right, Amanda, thank you very much. We'll check back in with you later tonight.
Now, we are going to have results from all of these races streaming on KREM 2 Plus starting in about 60 seconds.
If you don't yet have KREM 2 Plus, it is free to download right now on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.
It is election night, and the polls have just closed in Washington and Idaho.
Tonight, voters in the inland Northwest will decide on some big races and issues that will impact the region for years to come.
That includes Washington's governor, where someone new will take the office after 12 years.
We can bring Washingtonians together.
We need someone who can come into the governor's office and be a change agent.
And there will be another new face, this time representing Washington's 5th congressional district in Congress.
Abortion isn't mentioned in the Constitution, and as such, it's an issue for the states.
I think that it is disingenuous for my opponent to say that he just wouldn't vote if the issue came up before the Congress.
Plus, Washington voters will decide on 4 initiatives that could change the state's Climate Commitment Act, long-term care fund, and more.
2117 is so shocking, it's so extreme.
And that's not what I'm doing right now. I'm fixing something that is hurting everybody.
In Idaho, voters are deciding on Prop 1, which would open primaries and change the way the state votes.
Voters would be able to, vote for the person and not always the party.
If this were to come into place, we would completely and radically change our entire election system.
Plus, we are tracking the race for the White House. We'll share a detailed view of how voters across the inland Northwest are casting their ballots for president.
Well, good evening, and thank you for joining us on this live stream on KREM 2 Plus tonight as we track the latest election results and bring you reaction from the candidates. I'm Mark Hanrahan.
And I'm Whitney Ward. Polls have just closed here in the inland Northwest, and we expect to start getting results here in the next few minutes.
Let's take a look at some of the local races that we are tracking tonight. In Washington, voters are deciding on a new governor. Current Governor Jay Insley stepping down after 3 terms. Running for the seat are former Congressman Dave Reichert, a Republican, and Attorney General Bob Ferguson, a Democrat. Pre-election polling put Ferguson Ferguson in the lead. We'll see tonight if Reichert is able to close the gap with voters.
We are also tracking the race for Washington's 5th Congressional District, serving Eastern Washington. Republican Congresswoman Kathy McMorris Rogers is stepping down after 20 years, and Democrat Carmela Conroy and Republican Michael Bomgardner both seeking to replace her.
And one of our local races getting some national attention is for Washington's 4th Congressional District. Republican Dan Newhouse is running for re-election against another Republican, Jared Sessler. Former President Donald Trump has urged his supporters to vote against Newhouse after the congressman voted to impeach him following the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol.
In North Idaho, voters in Kootenai County will choose their next sheriff. 4 candidates are running for the position, including current Sheriff Bob Norris. Norris has held that position since 2020. The 3 other candidates are Justin Nagel, Dan Wilson, and Kyle Woodward. Now, there are also several statewide votes on initiatives and propositions in Washington and Idaho.
In Washington, voters will decide on 4 initiatives that could bring big changes to some state programs. Here's a quick look at each of them. Initiative 2066 would block state and local governments from restricting access to natural gas. 2109 would repeal the state's capital gains tax. Initiative 2117 would roll back the Climate Commitment Act, and 2124 would allow more flexibility for people to opt out of the state's long-term care fund.
And in Idaho, voters are deciding on 2 statewide issues. Prop 1 would eliminate party-based primaries in favor of a top 4 open primary system. And voters will also decide on a constitutional amendment which would block anyone who is not a citizen of the United States from voting in any election in Idaho.
It's a lot to cover, and of course, we are all waiting for those results to start coming in. As soon as they do, you will see them in a ticker at the bottom of your screen.
Right now, though, we do want to check in on how the vote counting is going. Cody Proctor is live at the Spokane County Elections Office in downtown Spokane. Cody, how's it going?
Well, Mark and Whitney, to say the least, it has been very busy here at the Spokane County Elections Office, and the work here has been steady as election staff work with people standing in line to cast their votes. Now, the Elections Office, when it came to that line of people, included people that needed to either resolve an issue with their ballot, get a new ballot, or register to vote. Now, as far as voter turnout for Spokane County, according to the Washington Secretary of State's office, over 240,000 ballots have been returned so far for Spokane County. That's 64% of the county's voters. According to Spokane County Elections Manager Mike McLaughlin, they're only expecting that turnout to get even higher once we get past tonight.
Some of the general presidential elections have been in the low 70s, and in 2020 it was at 82%, so we're going to be somewhere in between that.
Now, as of right now, there are still some voters here at the elections office, but staff did bring them inside, and they have closed the doors now that we have reached that 8 o'clock deadline. They do expect to process more of those ballots tomorrow. Tonight, they're mostly focusing on those voters that are still here inside the building, as well as at other voter service centers. Now, now that 8 o'clock has come and gone, we're just waiting on the results. McLaughlin says they are expecting to release at least 211,000 ballots. Live in Spokane, Cody Proctor, KREM 2 News.
All right, Cody, thank you very much. And we are also tracking the election results in Idaho at this hour. The polls also closed in North Idaho here just a few minutes ago.
KREM 2 Shannon Mounty is live in Idaho tonight. So how did voting go today, Shannon?
Well, I'm here at Lake City High School in Coeur d'Alene, where all evening we have seen long lines of voters and actually a lot of people looking to register a day of. As you mentioned, the polls have closed a few minutes ago. Just about 3 minutes ago, I watched the last voter here at the high school put their ballot into the box. Now all the activity behind me is poll workers kind of cleaning things up and getting those ballots to the elections office. Now, speaking of the elections office, the work has really just begun there because the absentee and in-person early voting for Kootenai County more than doubled over the election 4 years ago, the last presidential election. So I want to highlight some of those numbers because they are impressive. The Kootenai County Elections Office reports just over 19,600 people voted early in person. More than 22,000 absentee ballots were turned in, and all that early voted ended on Friday. So we do expect to see those results coming in the next few minutes here, any minute, and we'll see how that compares to all of the votes cast on Election Day. I'll send it back to you guys.
All right, sounds good, Shannon. Thank you very much. And as we break down the results tonight, we want to introduce you to Kevin Perch, a professor of political science from Eastern Washington University.
He will be helping provide some analysis of the results as they continue to come in. So, Kevin, first of all, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and Kevin, as we wait for election results, what are you expecting that we'll see in Washington and Idaho tonight?
I think that for the statewide elections, you're probably going to be seeing the Democrats do very well. I'm really more curious about what happens in some of those congressional elections in central Washington with Representative Newhouse and over here with Representative Bomgardner and Conroy.
Yeah, and speaking of that 4th congressional district, we mentioned it just a short time ago, but Newhouse was one of the few Republicans who voted to impeach Donald Trump over the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. Do you think that ends up hurting him, or has it hurt him to this point? Politically?
I think it has. He probably wouldn't have had as many challengers, Republican challengers, go up against him in the primaries had he not voted like that in the impeachment. So, I mean, it certainly didn't help him politically to go out there and vote against or vote for the impeachment.
He's one of very few still standing, honestly, who did vote for that impeachment, right?
Right, yeah, he is. One of the other representatives, Jamie Herrera Butler, was a representative from down in Vancouver, and we saw her lose in the primary in 2022. She's now running for Public Lands Commissioner here. So it's politically precarious to vote for that impeachment as a Republican.
It's interesting because as we wait for these big national election days to come through, Washington and Idaho are so reliably either blue or red that it's almost, it's not uninteresting, but you kind of expect what's going to happen every time. Yeah,
it's not as exciting or unknown as Pennsylvania or Michigan or Wisconsin. So, you know, it's not as exciting, but there's still really some important races going on there.
We want to talk to you now about the presidential race. The Associated Press has called Washington for Kamala Harris, and the AP says Donald Trump will win Idaho.
So let's take a look right now. This is the current Electoral College map. This is from the Associated Press. Remember, it takes 270 electoral votes to win the presidency. Right now, you can see Harris has 179, Trump sitting at 214. So, Kevin, as we take a look at this map, are any surprises or anything that stands out to you?
Right now, nothing really is surprising me. I think it's early to infer too much on what's going on in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin and Minnesota right now. There's a lot of ballots to get counted, and it's not evenly counted. Like a lot of times you get more rural places counting quicker than more urban places. So nothing really looks shocking right now with that election.
What's always interesting to me is we have 50 states and they all have different processes for running elections. So you're kind of just waiting for them to decide, you know, how they tabulate the results for any results to be known nationwide.
Yeah, absolutely. You're getting to see, you know, all 50 states and the District of Columbia. Different states have different procedures. They have different rules. They have different traditions. And so we get learn a little bit about each state's kind of like history and the way they do things right now.
Based on how close it is in some of those states, how long do you think we might have to wait to get those results?
Well, I don't know. They've all promised after 2020 that they were going to find ways to get a little bit more efficient. A number of these states have said we're going to have some kind of clarity tonight, at least on the West Coast. Pennsylvania might take a little bit longer than the others, but I think we're going to have a lot more knowledge in about 3 or 4 hours than we do right now.
All right. Kevin, stand by. We'll come back to you a little later in the broadcast. We want to tell you about a special feature available right now in the KREM 2 app. We have maps by county breakdown of the presidential race for both Washington and Idaho. You can go to the maps and click on your county to see who won and by how much. Check it out right now on KREM 2 app. It is free to download on your phone's app store.
Also, let's talk now about the race for governor in Washington. The state will have a new leader for the first time in more than a decade. Governor Jay Inslee is stepping down.
The race features Democrat Bob Ferguson and Republican Dave Reichert. Ferguson is the state attorney general, while Reichert is a former member of Congress. We spoke with both candidates before election night about what they would bring to the office. Take a listen.
Our message is the same, whether you're Republican, Democrat, or undecided, which is, look, we're facing many challenges as a state. We need someone who can come into the governor's office and be a change agent to make improvements on public safety, homelessness, affordability, but at the same time defending our core freedoms, like reproductive freedom. And I'm the candidate that fulfills both of those needs for our state.
The message is that we can bring Washingtonians together. There's an opportunity here for us to have a moderate Republican governor who can work with a Democrat House and a Democrat Senate. And what I hope that opportunity gives us is to set an example in this state how really the two parties can work together.
All right, so we want to bring in now Kevin Perch, again, the political professor from Eastern Washington University. We're going to rely on you a lot tonight. There's so much that we are tracking. But as we talk about some hypotheticals, a win for Ferguson or a win for Reichert, talk about what this kind of means about the direction of the state.
I think a win for Ferguson is just more of the status quo. I think you're going to see a lot of what you've seen before with Insley. A win for Reichert would be kind of more of a check on the legislature and maybe a more of a Republican veto power on some of their other legislation, maybe some of their environmental legislation, some of their taxing legislation.
And it seems like leading up to this race, Reichert has kind of had to shift maybe more to the middle to appeal to a broader spectrum of voters this go around versus when he was running for Congress.
Yeah, absolutely. Now that he's running in a statewide election and he's focusing largely on, King County and Thurston County and Pierce County, he's going to have to be a little bit more moderate to get some of those more suburban voters in Bellevue or Issaquah to vote for him.
In some of his interviews, Ferguson has, though, tried to kind of separate himself a little bit from Jay Inslee. Do you see any differences really there?
Yeah, I think every candidate wants to kind of stand on their own, make their own mark. And so you want to demonstrate, they're all political actors. They all want to have their own personality and everything. So there might be a few differences there, but in the main, I think you're probably going to see a lot of similarities in the government.
In the polling leading into this race, I believe we had Ferguson about 15 points ahead of Reichert statewide. Do you see that changing a bunch? I know we haven't seen the returns yet.
Yeah, I don't see that changing too much at all. I think a question would be about turnout. If maybe some of these initiatives can motivate some of the conservatives to be more likely to go out and vote, you might see it kind of tighten up. But I think that's pretty much a fair guess.
As we talk about Eastern Washington representation, a lot of times people feel like their interests here on this side of the state don't always get represented equally from these state office holders. Do you see any of that changing, or at least that being known and people in those positions starting to maybe take notice?
Yeah, I think, elected officials, especially statewide, they do want to have some kind of representation over here. They don't want to be known as the governor of Seattle. Yeah. So whoever it is going to try to have some representation over here. But it's a democracy. The bulk of the voters live over on the west side. You do need to pay attention to them as well.
Yeah. All right, we want to now turn our attention to another race that will feature someone new in Washington's 5th Congressional District seat. Of course, that position long held by Congresswoman Cathy McMorris Rogers. She held that for 20 years, but she announced before the election that she would be retiring.
This race features Democrat Carmela Conroy and Republican Michael Bomgardner. Ms. Conroy served as a U.S. Foreign Service officer for 24 years, and before that worked as a Spokane County deputy prosecuting attorney. Mr. Bomgardner served as a Washington State Senator for 8 years and is currently the Spokane County Treasurer.
Turning now to KREM 2 Chief Journalist Amanda Rowley, who spoke with both candidates before the election. And Amanda joining us now live with an update on this race. Amanda?
Good evening, Mark and Whitney. I do want to turn some attention. We're hearing some commotion here. We're at the historic Davenport in downtown Spokane. This is the local Republican Party, one of many here in Spokane on election night tonight. We're expecting to hear from Congresswoman Cathy McMorris Rogers, and she will be introducing Republican candidate Michael Bomgardner, running to take over her seat after she's stepped down. Now, we do know we have quite a few other candidates here today. Al French, we heard from earlier. He is running for Spokane County's commissioner seat as well. We do have Spokane County Sheriff John Knowles in the building as well. Now, when I spoke to Bomgardner on primary election night, again, those results, he had 28% of the vote on primary elections, and Carmela Conroy, his Democratic opponent, had 18% of the vote. Bomgardner told me that night that he's hoping to take on more of those Republican votes for the general election that he didn't get for the primary. Talking around the room here today with Republicans here at the election party, that's an indicator that they're hoping to lean in on as well to secure his success in the 5th Congressional District. Now, tonight we are expecting Congresswoman Cathy McMorris Rogers, again, to introduce Michael Bomgardner here. We are expecting in the next few minutes as we wait for those election results to drop. Of course, we'll be sharing their remarks here shortly here on KREM 2. For now, Amanda Rowley, KREM 2 News.
Amanda, thank you very much. And just got some updated numbers from our producer that Bomgardner is currently leading in that race for the 5th Congressional District by a margin of about 59 to 41%. Of course, these are the early returns. We'll expect more numbers to come in throughout the night. In the meantime, Spokane County has historically been pretty strong for Republican candidates, but several Democrats are hoping to win this year.
So KREM 2's Connor McAvoy right now at a watch party for Spokane County Democrats. So Connor, what is the mood there right now?
Well, the mood has definitely shifted in just the last couple of minutes, getting those numbers in, like you were just reporting on. 59% for Republican candidate Michael Bomgardner and 41% for Carmela Conroy. That has shifted dramatically in just the last couple of minutes. And you can hear some of the excitement right now behind me at this watch party hosted by Spokane County Democrats. They're very excited for those results coming in. The Associated Press is reporting that the results are at 53% reporting right now. This race has not been called. Currently, like we were just describing, Michael Bomgardner at 59% and Democratic candidate Carmela Conroy at 41%. I spoke with her earlier. She's incredibly confident in as far as the results of this election. As we're getting those results coming in, she's very excited to be around her supporters as well as other candidates for different positions in the Democratic Party. Very excited for tonight, and she's going to be speaking here in just about 15 or so minutes as those results are still coming in at about 8:30 or so, which is, like I said, just about 15 minutes from now. And we'll keep you updated with those numbers as we're getting them as of right now. I'm going to send it to you guys back in the studio.
Connor McAvoy live tonight. Thank you, Connor. One Senate seat is up for re-election in Washington. Senator Maria Cantwell, a Democrat, is seeking to keep her seat. She is running against Republican Raul Garcia.
So polls before Election Day showed that Cantwell had a very large lead. As we take a look at tonight's results, right now showing about 50-50. But again, it's really important to remember that these are very early results. The AP has actually already called it for Senator Maria Cantwell, again, who has held this position for quite a number of years.
Yeah, voters in both Washington and Idaho are voting on statewide initiatives and propositions. If passed, they could mean big changes for people in both states.
KREM 2's Laura Papetti is tracking those results for us tonight. Let's turn to Laura now. What are voters saying so far?
Well, let's start by talking about Proposition 1 in Idaho. If passed, this proposition would do away with the state's current primary system, which is based on political party. And in its place, there would be what's called open primaries and a new top 4 ranked choice system. So it's a lot to break down. So before we get to some of the results, let's hear from Tim Pham with a closer look at Prop 1.
The initiative Proposition 1 would repeal the state's partisan primary system and replace it with a top 4 primary system where all candidates seeking that office appear on one ballot and the top 4 vote earners advance to the general election. Candidates would be able to list their party affiliation, but it would not mean they represent the party. Candidates would also not be required to list party affiliation. This primary system would be used at elections for the U.S. Senate, the U.S. House of Representatives, state legislature, elective state office, and county elective office. Supporters say every registered voter should have the right to vote in a primary, not just those who identify as Republican or Democrat. Opponents say replacing the system with the top 4 primary is overly complicated and unnecessary. They claim all that's needed for independent voters to have a voice is to change the primary system to an open one.
All right, just taking a look at the numbers right now coming in from the AP, 79% no as of right now, 20% yes as of this point, but we'll keep you updated on the results, of course, as more votes continue to be counted.
All right, Laura, thank you very much.
All right, let's bring back in Kevin Perch, a political science professor at Eastern Washington University. So what's the message from Idaho voters when it comes to Prop 1? We just heard the numbers, 79% at this point voting no.
It's showing that Idaho voters are probably pretty happy with what they have with letting the parties have a little bit more control over what's going on in the state.
Yeah, Todd, let's talk about kind of ranked choice voting a bit, because states like Alaska have it.
Right.
And it's a bit difficult sometimes to explain exactly what it means and how it works.
Right.
Do you have a breakdown to put you on the spot?
I do. It's a little more confusing. Rather than just voting for your favorite candidate, what you're going to do is actually rank each one, first, second, third, fourth. And then in the process, as you go through, as one candidate gets less votes, then their point goes to whoever their next choice is. So the idea is you're not really voting for the lesser of two evils, but you get to say, like, this is really my favorite candidate. I really like them to get some votes. And then if they don't, well, then I'll go to my next candidate.
Now, there has been some talk about that type of system as being able to find more moderate candidates and allow them to succeed. Do you see that?
Yeah, there is some pretty, not overwhelming evidence, but there is some evidence of it that actually ends up happening. It allows you to get different voices out there. So maybe, groups that are more minor parties now that might have more strength, but they're not actually a major party, they tend to get a little more strength in that too.
Yeah, we'll have to continue to watch that one as those numbers come in. All right, we are getting some new election numbers in right now, so let's take a look at some of the election results for key races that we are tracking tonight.
All right, so let's begin with the race for Washington governor as we take a look again at these very early returns. Right now, Dave Reichert showing 53% of the vote to Bob Ferguson with 47%. The winner, of course, will take over the job that has been held by Jay Insley for the last 12 years. But again, these numbers are still very early.
In the race for the Senate, incumbent Maria Cantwell seeking re-election against Republican Raul Garcia. Taking a look at the numbers right there. Cantwell currently with 61% of the vote. Dr. Garcia with about 39%. Cantwell, by the way, was first elected to the Senate in the year 2000.
In Washington's 5th Congressional District here in Eastern Washington, Republican Michael Bomgardner facing Democrat Carmela Conroy. Again, Michael Bomgardner firmly in the lead at this point with 59% of the vote over Carmela Conroy with just 41% of the vote tonight.
All right, moving on. In Washington's 4th Congressional District, 2 Republicans vying for the seat. Incumbent Dan Newhouse facing Jared Sessler. Look at the results, kind of close right now. Newhouse in the lead with about 51% of the vote compared to Sessler with 49%. A little less than, what is that, about 3,500 votes separating the two right now. Newhouse, of course, has been under attack by former President Donald Trump after the congressman voted to impeach Trump following the attack on the U.S. Capitol on January 6th.
All right, let's look at some of the local races now as we just showed you the governor one. In the city of Spokane, though, we know that voters have been deciding on Proposition 1. That's one that we are going to continue to track here for throughout most of the evening. Again, we do not yet have those numbers. Do you know much about, when we talk about public safety and why this has been such an important part of what Mayor Lisa Brown has been asking for this year?
Yeah, this is kind of critical. If you talk to Spokaneites of all political stripes, some of the things they're concerned about are the public safety issues. So this is an opportunity for them to get a little bit more funding for both police and fire and the criminal justice system to maybe alleviate some of the concerns that people have with what's going on in Spokane.
It seems like right now people are maybe the mood seems to be maybe opposed to new taxes. And I don't know if this faces an uphill battle or not, but just anecdotally, it seems like it kind of might face a bit of a headwind.
I'm really curious about this one just because it's facing two things that Spokaneites are really concerned about right now, which is public safety, but also the taxes. I think that's why you've seen kind of an aggressive campaign from the city that this is, they're laying out very specifically what they say the money is going to be going to, what their goals are for it. It's not, they say, just a blank check for things and stuff. It's a little more detailed than that. And so I think that's kind of what the concerns are trying to alleviate with that.
Yeah. Of course, usually in elections, incumbents hold the advantage, right?
Right.
When seeking re-election.
Yeah.
Are you surprised by the numbers so far from Dan Newhouse? He's still in the lead, but not by much.
Not by much. I'm not. I'd like to see more where those votes are actually, what counties those votes are coming in from before I made any kind of announcement on that. Yeah. Incumbents do better. And so it's not. Maybe it's kind of surprising that it's that close, but that also shows the power of Trump and that wing of the Republican Party right now.
I have one more quick question from you.
Absolutely.
As we're reporting on these initial returns, these are the ballots, correct me if I'm wrong, that came in before Election Day.
Absolutely.
And were already processed but not tabulated until 8 p.m. tonight. Is
exactly.
That your take on
That's what happens, yeah.
Okay.
And, historically, although we're in kind of an era of flux, what we tend to see is it's not universal, but generally speaking, Republicans are turn in their ballots more earlier. That's horrible English, I'm sorry. But Republicans turn in their ballot earlier than Democrats. So, you tend to get this kind of early wave of Republicans, and then Democrats tend to vote, last weekend or today.
All right. Kevin, stand by for us.
Absolutely.
We want to thank you for joining us for this special election night stream here on KREM 2 Plus. Shortly, we'll be joining viewers watching us on KREM 2 as well.
We'll be right back with more local results and analysis on KREM 2 Plus here in just a few moments. But right now, we're giving you a quick look at the latest Electoral College map as we watch the race for the White House.
CBS News and KREM 2 Plus this election night. I'm Mark Hanrahan.
And I'm Whitney Ward. We are getting some new election numbers in at this hour. So let's take a look right now. Some of the results for the key races that we are tracking tonight. In the top race, Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump, of course, both vying to become the 47th president. In Washington, the AP has called the state and its 12 electoral votes for Vice President Kamala Harris.
Meantime, in Idaho, the AP has called the state and its 4 electoral votes for former President Donald Trump.
Now, we are closely watching the race for Washington's governor at this hour as well, between Democrat Bob Ferguson and Republican Dave Reichert. So as you can see now, Bob Ferguson taking the lead with 57% of the vote to Dave Reichert with 43% right now. The winner will be taking over the job that has long been held by Jay Insley. He's held that job for the past 11 years.
In the race for the Senate, incumbent Maria Cantwell is seeking re-election against Republican Raul Garcia. The AP has called this race already for Maria Cantwell. She was first elected to the Senate in the year 2000. She has 61% of the vote right now.
And in Washington's 5th Congressional District for Eastern Washington, Republican Michael Bomgardner facing Democrat Carmela Conroy, but again holding firm to that 59% lead over Conroy, who just has 41% tonight. Both looking to take over the seat that has been held for 20 years by Congresswoman Kathy McMorris Rogers, who decided to retire.
And as we look at all these results tonight, we want to bring in Kevin Perch, a professor of political science at Eastern Washington University.
So, Professor, quickly, what are we seeing kind of from these first results? Any surprises?
No real surprises. We kind of expected that the Democrats would do well in Washington in the statewide elections. We also expected the Republicans to do well in Eastern Washington. So it's going kind of what we expected it to do.
All right. Any projections for any kind of flips when we look at some of the more hyper-local races?
I don't know yet if I'm prepared. I'm sorry. I'd like to see. I'm really curious to see what happens with the Washington or in the Spokane ballot, the tax question on public safety. I'm kind of curious to see how the tug of war between the no taxes and more public safety, what wins out on that here. I'm also curious about Dan Newhouse's race and see where we go with that.
It'll be interesting to see how that one shakes out. Also, Jamie Herrera-Butler, and if she'll become our next commissioner of public lands.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
She's in a tight race there.
Yes, yeah.
All right, so stand by.
All right, KREM 2 election coverage is going to continue streaming. We will be on KREM 2 Plus. We are right now, and we also have a live election special as the polls close across the Northwest.
If you don't yet have it, KREM 2 Plus is free to download right now on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV. For joining us on KREM 2 Plus for our special election night coverage. You can see the latest results in the ticker right there at the bottom of your screen.
So right now we do want to check in on how the vote counting is going. Cody Proctor is live at Spokane County Elections Office right now in downtown Spokane. Cody, how's it going down there tonight?
Well, let's just say Mark and Whitney has been incredibly busy here at the Spokane County Elections Office. In fact, this is the quietest I have seen it so far tonight. But as you notice that people are still inside right now, staff are working with some of those voters that were dealing with issues when it came to their ballot, or they needed to get a new ballot, or they needed to register to vote. Now, the Elections Office even brought in people in to close the doors for the Elections Office here to deal with the crowds as well. They also opened up 2 other voter service centers to help with that. As far for voter processing, according to Spokane County Elections Manager Mike McLaughlin, they say that is expected to pick back up tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock.
Our goal is to run everything through first pass, is what we call it, to show that the ballot was received. And then we'll go through signature verification. We already have some ballots that have already been signature verified today. They'll be accepted. We will start processing those to be opened. So we'll have another set of results tomorrow night.
And so, as you can see, when it comes to results, when it comes to processing those ballots, there's still quite a ways to go on that. But let's talk about voter turnout right now. According to the Washington Secretary of State's office, they're reporting over 240,000 ballots have been returned so far for Spokane County. That was the latest update today on their website. That's about 64% of the county's voters, and McLaughlin is only expecting that number to continue to get bigger as more of those ballots are processed. Reporting live in Spokane County, or in Spokane County Elections Office, Cody Proctor, KREM 2 News.
All right, Cody, thank you very much.
Turning now, we are hearing that current Congresswoman Kathy McMorris Rogers is speaking. This is at the watch party with Michael Bomgardner, who is looking to replace her in Congress. Let's take a listen.
Go ahead. No, we had some delays in delivery, and once we get a new president and a new transportation, Secretary will clean up the logistics and get stuff delivered on time. So you can't see it. It's a Bible cover with her name and others. Yes, the favorite book. Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Suzanne. It's great to see everyone on election night 2024. Endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, among these life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, goodness. That's who we are. That's what America's all about. You know what? In every election we reaffirm who we are. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For the tremendous honor it's been to serve as your representative for the last 20 years. Thank you. It truly has been all of you who've inspired me every day, all across Eastern Washington, the good, honest, hardworking people of Eastern Washington, and I've got to see the best of Eastern Washington. And I've been inspired by all of you every day. Tonight I'm just flooded by memories, and my heart is full of gratitude. I'm so grateful, you know, that this little girl, farm kid from Kettle Falls, Washington, you know, had the amazing honor of representing you, walking the halls of Congress, serving in the United States House of Representatives, representing all of you, only in America. And only God would think of something like this, but it really has been my honor. And tonight, I am deeply honored and excited to be able to pass the baton. Okay. Michael Bomgardner and Eleanor and their beautiful family are going to carry on representing this district and doing it very well. Congratulations.
So report is outgoing Congresswoman Kathy McMorris Rogers handing the baton figuratively, I guess, and literally too, perhaps, to Michael Bomgardner. He's currently leading in this race against Conroy, but this race has not been called yet. Just want to make that clear.
Yeah, it's very important to know that these are just the early returns. He has been, I guess, considered the front runner in this race. But again, nothing has been called by the race, but he certainly is celebrating at this hour.
Last numbers I believe we saw were somewhere around 58% to 42% in that race with Bomgardner being up. Let's take a listen as he walks up to the podium right now.
Let me start by just saying thank you, Eastern Washington. A big shout out to our hosts for this wonderful evening, outstanding representatives Mike Voles and Suzanne Schmidt. Thank you very much. Looks like everybody's having a great time. And to our wonderful dear Kathy McMorris Rogers. I mean, serving this district for 20 years with such grace and distinction. We are so blessed and lucky to have had her service and that of her family, Brian, her wonderful children. Every time I walk through the mall in downtown Spokane and I see that big red shoe, I think of that as the size of the shoes I have to fill. The Kathy McMorris Rogers red high pump there. And I had a lot of folks, why is Kathy, leading? As she's the chair of the Energy and Commerce Committee and kind of on top of things in Congress. And the best equivalence I could give was, when Seinfeld was the #1 show in America, and he wanted to leave with everybody wanting more on a high note. I think that's how we all feel about our wonderful Kathy McMorris Rogers. So thank you so much. When we got the news that Kathy had decided that she was not going to run for re-election, earlier that day, I actually got the news. I was driving, I had picked the kids up at Scouts, and I got home and a message popped up on my phone that said Kathy McMorris Rogers had announced tomorrow that she's not running for re-election. 72% of the district is in Spokane County. And I just stared and looked at it, and I thought, good grief. And it was a big decision to make, and that night I got up at about, I think, 4 in the morning and walked around Manitou Park, and then the next night, I thought, what are we going to do with this? What's God calling us to do, and what's on our heart? And so Eleanor and I were talking about it, and we had some of our dear friends like Phil Altmaier and Bishop Daley and some other community leaders, friends and supporters talked to us about it, and one of the people we wanted to talk to was Kathy and Brian, so we texted them, and they said, sure, come on over, and we'll help you think through this. And Kathy had made chocolate chip cookies and tea and coffee, and she just said, and I really legitimately thought, going into the meeting, that she might say that Washington, D.C. was so dysfunctional and that it was so tough on the family that it wouldn't be worth the sacrifice and what you went through. But she and Brian were both, really warm and optimistic. No, D.C. could be great, and Mike, you're not certainly there's other good people that think about running for office as well too. But if we did get back there, we might make a difference. And for me in LA, it was like, all right, this sounds right, and it felt good. And so it started this amazing journey 8 months ago, and it's just been this tremendous ride. We have such a wonderful district, and the ability to go out there from all the way up north to the Canadian border, all the way down south to Walla, and get to see folks, and really the 5th Congressional District, Eastern Washington, this is the best of America. What you represent, the values, the hard work, the dedication. And so it was a privilege through all the parades, all the fairs, and so, we feel so blessed. And I woke up this morning just feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude. And, when I talk to a lot of candidates about running for office, and, I first ran for office back in 2010 when we came out of Afghanistan and came home and ran in that exciting state Senate race. And when I talk to candidates that run for office, I tell them, I said, every day, you just have to wake up proud that you have the courage to do this, because it is not an easy process. So my hat is off to everyone, whether you won your election or not. Thank you for stepping forward to run. And you have to be grateful that you have the opportunity to live in a country like America where you're afforded that opportunity. And I woke up every morning proud and grateful on this race, and my real hope is that when we get to Congress, I'll make you proud and grateful for the sense that you supported us. So thank you so much. Stars of the show here, I do need to thank a number of folks. And the first person I really want to thank is my opponent, Carmela Conroy. I think she is an impressive candidate. I salute her for stepping forward to run for office. She did wonderful service to our country, and I thought she ran a great campaign. So hats off to Carmela. She'll be very proud of the race she ran. I know I'm going to leave a few folks out, but I'll start with my political co-chairs of my campaign, the one and only Senator Mike Patton, who's had such tremendous distinction. The throwing Samoan Jack Thompson is in here somewhere, I hope. Where Jack, you're still here. Jack Thompson, his first foray into politics, was if you get a better leader than Jack Thompson, have me help out. And of course, the most important co-chair of the political operation of my campaign is the wonderful, irreplaceable, beautiful, I can't think too many adjectives and superlatives, but my wonderful wife, Eleanor.
All right, again, Michael Bomgardner there celebrating tonight. Last check, he had about 59% of the vote, and looking as though he is celebrating tonight a victory. And you can see Carmela Conroy there prepared to speak right now.
Let's take a listen in.
Workers, families, women, and the men who respect and love them, who cast their ballot for a better and brighter future for Eastern Washington. While we came up short, the people of this district sent a clear message that they are ready to move past divisive politics, and they want someone who will deliver results. During the campaign, Michael Bomgardner promised to pass a quality farm bill, to protect Social Security, to support veterans, to certify the presidential election, and to refuse to restrict abortion at the federal level. This would be a welcome change from his behavior during his time in the state Senate. Well, we'll be watching closely to make sure he keeps his word. In Congress, he must work across the aisle and put Eastern Washington ahead of party, and we must hold him accountable if he does not. After almost 30 years of apolitical public service, this was my first time running for office, which is a very weird sort of job interview, and I didn't know what it was going to be like. But I have to tell you, I am so grateful for the members of my team, some of whom are up here on stage and some of whom are at home or out in the audience, and I am so grateful for the grassroots movement that got us so far. And we're not done. We're going to run again in 26, and I hope I'll have your support. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
All right, we have just heard Carmela Conroy, who of course was looking to replace Congresswoman Kathy McMorris Rogers in the 5th District, appearing to sound as though she was conceding the race. But again, this race has not been called, but we did see Michael Bomgardner celebrating as though he has won that seat now.
Yeah, Conroy just moments ago said, well, we came up short. The people showed they want to move past this divisiveness in this race. So it sounded like a concession speech, although again, this race has not yet been called. I want to bring back in Kevin Perch, professor of political science from Eastern Washington University. Let's talk about Washington's 5th District a bit. Because Tom Foley was the Speaker of the House. He was the incumbent. He was ousted from that role. And since then, this has been a reliably red district.
Absolutely. It's one of the safer districts in the country. It's reliably red, yeah.
Do you see that changing anytime soon?
I don't. I think that for the Democrats to start making inroads, they have to get a little bit better at talking to rural voters, reaching out to rural voters, hearing what their needs are. And until then, I don't see that changing.
All right, thank you very much. We are now hearing that Senator Maria Cantwell is speaking tonight. Let's take a listen.
To make a point loud and clear that these values are worth fighting for and that the success of our state can be contributing to the rest of the nation. I also want to thank all the people who worked on this campaign across the state, from Spokane to Vancouver to Bellingham down to Cowlitz County. We have worked so hard to make this the message of opportunity and to elect President Harris so she too can grow the middle class in the United States of America. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Washington voters. I promise to keep fighting for us and to keep working across the aisle to accomplish what our nation needs. Thank you all very much.
Maria Cantwell, the incumbent, the Democrat from Washington, easily winning this race so far. She has about 60% of the vote compared to Dr. Raul Garcia's roughly 40% of the vote so far.
As we talk about these statewide races, you talked a little bit about the rural voter. Yeah. Do you think that this speaks to the power of the rural voter that maybe largely has been underrepresented in the past?
Yeah, I think this probably speaks some to the power of the rural voter. I think it also speaks to the Democratic Party is largely it's evolving into a party of largely city and more urban living, college educated people. And so that's a hard coalition. You know, in a state like Washington, it's a little bit easier to build a majority coalition with that group, but around the country, that's a hard coalition to build.
Yeah. There are a lot more people in this country besides those people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
On the other hand, in a state like Washington, the vote is such a large percent of the state vote in Western Washington. Absolutely. That a candidate like Maria Cantwell in a statewide race, it's tough to beat her.
It's very tough to beat her. You know, she's been the senator for 24 years now. She's got that incumbency advantage. She's got the name recognition. Mm-hmm. She's done things for Washington State that a lot of people really approve. It's a very challenging thing to beat someone like Maria Cantwell.
And it looks like, I know we're not through election night yet, but, you know, Democrats could be in the minority in the U.S. Senate.
They could.
This round. All right. Okay, Washington voters are deciding on 4 statewide initiatives in this election that would impact the state's Climate Commitment Act, long-term care fund, and more.
Turning now to Laura Papetti, who is tracking the election results for us at this hour. And Laura, what are voters saying that you're seeing?
Okay, some fairly tight races. First, let's go ahead and take a look. There are 4 initiatives, and they were pitched as something of a package deal. The group Let's Go Washington sponsored all 4 of them, and the opposition then joined together to ask voters to vote no on each one. So let's take a look at those early results. We're taking a look at 2066. If passed, it would block state and local governments from restricting access to natural gas. So take a look right now. Yes, 51%, no, 49%. So very tight at this point. There is a state law which impacts really only Puget Sound Energy in the Seattle area. But again, taking a look at this, it's very tight right now. Next, we're going to 2109, which seeks to repeal the state's capital gains tax. Again, a vote to repeal. So a yes vote is to repeal, 36% to a no, 64%. The tax applies to someone with an adjusted capital gain of $250,000 or more. The initiative sponsor said Washington has a long history of no state taxes and wants to close the door to any new taxes. So again, that one, no, 64%. So let's now talk about Initiative 2117. It seeks to roll back the state's Climate Commitment Act. Critics of the CCA said it's really driven up gas prices all across the state, while supporters say getting rid of the program would cost the state billions. So we're going to go ahead and take a closer look with Whitney Ward at that initiative.
Initiative 2117 would repeal the Climate Commitment Act, a state law that provided for a cap and invest program designed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 95%. Supporters say the tax is what's making Washington's price of living the highest in the nation alongside California. Opponents say the program is the true solution to lower transportation costs by getting the state off of fossil fuels. So, a yes vote on I-2117 means eliminating the Climate Commitment Act, while a no vote will keep it in place.
All right, so let's take a look at some of the results coming in. A resounding no, 62%. So people saying, again, no to Initiative 2117. All right. So let's take a look at what we have going on next. We're going to take a look at 2124, I believe. That's the final initiative. It would allow more flexibility for people to opt out of the state's long-term care fund. Those who oppose the initiative say if passed, it would bankrupt the program. Channing Curtis has a look at what's at stake.
Initiative 2124 would allow employees and self-directed workers to opt out of coverage under WA Cares, the state's long-term health care program. That program is paid for by a mandatory payroll tax and provides long-term health services, such as home health care or nursing home care, to qualifying individuals. Supporters say workers should have the choice to opt out of the program and may find private long-term care insurance a better deal. Opponents say millions of working Washingtonians are counting on the fund to pay for their care in case of injury, illness, or age, and voting yes would essentially repeal the program.
All right, so again, that one coming in, people saying yes, 44%, to not repealing the program, no at 56%. So again, some fairly tight races, some not so tight. Taking a look at those 4 Washington initiatives. And remember, there are a lot of ballots out there across the state, and tonight's results at this point only preliminary. So we have a lot more numbers to wait for as they continue to count, and we will certainly keep you updated right here, and of course, KREM.com.
All right, Laura, thank you very much. And bringing Kevin Perch back in here as we talk about the Climate Commitment Act. We talked a lot about that for the last year as it raised gas prices for a lot of people way more than they had expected and way more than the state had said it would. Yet the vote seems to show that people are willing to keep that in place. Are you surprised?
I'm not really surprised. There was a really concerted campaign to vote no on all 4 of these initiatives. And so I'm not really surprised at any of those ones. They did a very good job explaining that there would be, cutbacks on roads and other transportation infrastructure if you vote no against this. There's the environmental component about reducing the carbon that's popular in Washington state. So it's not super surprising that it's where it's at.
I mean, the Climate Commitment Act essentially makes the state's largest polluters pay for carbon emissions. Right. That payment, that money goes back into the state and it pays for different transportation projects and I guess so-called green projects across the state.
Yeah. And one of the questions was that will get passed on to other people. That was a big concern. That was the complaint, was that, the largest polluters, if they had the ability to, would pass that on to like other consumers or drivers, people using cars. And we saw that. We saw the cost of gas go up with this.
Whitney touched on it a bit, but initially state leaders, the proponents of the Climate Commitment Act, said that they anticipated it raising gas prices by a few cents a gallon. They said it wouldn't be noticeable to most Washingtonians. In reality, it was more like 40 cents a gallon that it ended up increasing gas prices, initially at least.
Yeah. The thing is the theory behind things like this tax are that you actually have to raise the price on the end consumers, because as things get more expensive, then people are less likely to engage in those behaviors. Sure. So there needed to be, for this to be successful, if the goal is to get people to drive less and have less carbon output, the price was probably going to have to get passed on to the consumers sooner or later for the tax to be effective in that regard.
The one initiative, at least in Washington, that appears to be passing is the one that essentially would allow consumers to choose whether they want natural gas. The way it was written, I believe it was utilities with 500,000 or more customers, they would not be able to use natural gas going forward. So it wouldn't impact a lot of people, at least on this side of the state. Right. But over on the west side, like in Puget Sound, for example, it wouldn't allow for any new customers to hook up to natural gas.
Right. And, this is... Again, it was interesting because there was some polling coming out saying that this was probably going to pass and that the long-term care might pass. Natural gas is popular with people. If you've lived in Spokane for a while and the power's gone out, but you have a gas-powered fireplace or something, and that's the only way to heat your house, it's a popular thing. So, Washingtonians, there's kind of that dichotomy that we have where we really claim to like the environment, but we also like natural gas, you know.
Especially when the power goes out.
Especially when the heat is a good thing.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm looking here at the results for Spokane County versus the state. Some of these are much, much closer on this side of the state. Once again, does it speak to the power of the voting bloc over in Western Washington that is very hard to combat?
I think it does. You know, I mean, there is a description in political science about the cascade curtain, and that, you know, on the west side of the state, it's got a very different political outlook than we do over on this side. And I think you're seeing right there both the divide and just the large amount of people who live over there compared to here.
I'm just being told by our producer that the AP has called the race for Bob Ferguson, the race for Washington governor, and I understand that Dave Reichert is about to speak over in Bellevue, so let's take a listen into him.
Can you hear me okay? All right. Okay. So I am, all right, somebody back there is my age and has a hearing aid. Or doesn't have a hearing aid. What an honor it is for me to stand in front of you tonight. Thank you. All right, we fought a tough battle. It's not over yet, right? No, we're going to wait. You know me from my other campaigns. We are not going to concede this race until the last vote is counted, period. I know that Bob Ferguson has already declared victory, but he declared victory, 6 months ago, right? But we are going to wait until the last vote is counted, because that's what we do in the United States of America. Every vote counts. Every vote counts. I want us to leave tonight with a smile on our face. There's a lot of votes to count. But I want you to know this too. The numbers don't look good for us right now. But I do believe that God has a plan. Now, I've been criticized by my opponent for invoking the name of God. Yeah. But I'll tell you, one of the things I don't want you to do is move. So I'm not even going to ask you the question, how many of you in here, because I heard it over the last year and a half or so. A lot of people said they might move. I want you to stay and fight. We need to stay and fight. We need to hold.
That was Dave Reichert right there saying that it's not looking good for them, but it's not over yet. They're not going to concede, he said, until every last vote is counted.
On that note, though, we are turning to Bob Ferguson, who is speaking right now also over in Western Washington. Take a listen.
The United States, who is more prepared to defend your freedoms against that administration than I am. I'm excited that if that day was to come, I will have the best partner to be the next Attorney General, Nick Brown, to help me with that. Now, we launched this campaign last year in Spokane, Washington, the city where I started off as a young lawyer. And I made two core commitments to this campaign when we launched this campaign. First, we would reject all donations from large corporations and corporate PACs. Why? Because this is a people-powered grassroots campaign promoted and supported by Washingtonians just like you. And second, we committed to campaigning and seeking votes in all 39 counties. Why? Because I'll be the governor for all Washingtonians. Now, we could not have this decisive victory tonight, and it is decisive, without the help of my incredible campaign team led by Catherine Bobbin and Bailey Burgess. Give it up for both of them. Bailey's right here. campaigns are tough, and I appreciate Dave Reichert stepping up and running for governor. He ran a hard-fought campaign. Please join me in a big round of applause and thanking Dave Reichert for his many years of service to the people of the state of Washington. And speaking of thank yous, let's get up for Governor Jay Inslee and Trudy Insley. Are a family operation, and as some of you know, I'm from a large family of 7 kids. All of my siblings are here tonight, along with my extended family of in-laws and cousins and nephews and nieces. Please thank them for supporting me throughout this political campaign and all my campaigns for the last 20 years. And speaking of family, I'm joined by my wife,
Bob
Pauline.
Ferguson, who has accepted the position and is certainly celebrating this evening. The AP has called this race for Bob Ferguson to take over for Jay Inslee as Washington governor.
I want to bring back in Kevin Pritchard. If you're just joining us, he is a professor of political science at Eastern Washington University. Let's do some analysis on this race. I mean, based on previous polling leading into this election, this is not really a surprise.
No, it's not really a surprise at all. Democrats outnumber Republicans in the state. Independents in the state tend to lean a little bit more Democratic, so it's not really a surprise at all.
Ferguson, of course, the acting attorney general for Washington. He'll now become governor.
Right.
Do you see him differing much from Jay Inslee?
You know, every candidate and every elected official likes to put their own stamp on things, demonstrate that they're different than everyone else. I don't know if you're going to see, 4 years is a long time. We don't know what's going to come down the pike in another year or 2 years or 3 years. But right now, I don't really see too much difference. It's probably going to be in the main a lot of status quo of what we have been doing.
Do you see them, is there a message from Eastern Washington voters to any of these statewide office holders? And do you think they're hearing it?
I think there is. I mean, every vote is a message, right? When you put up the county map or the map of the counties and you see some that are, red and some that are blue, all of that is a message.
Reichert is winning in Spokane County, obviously.
Reichert is winning in Spokane County. Reichert, I haven't seen the map, but I'm going to guess he's winning in every county in Eastern Washington except for Whitman. That would be my guess right now. And, that is a message, and Ferguson did mention it in his speech there that, he wants to be the governor of all counties in Washington state. That's kind of the attempt of all of them. They want to govern everything, but when the population lives someplace, you gotta focus on that.
Kevin, thank you very much. I want to go back out to our crews in the field right now. Our Amanda Rowley is standing by with candidate for County Commissioner Al French, who is slightly leading in the results so far. Amanda?
Yeah, that's right. So again, we are at the historic Davenport with the local Republicans. I'm joined by County Commissioner Al French, looking at a strong lead with the initial election results. What do you make of that? At least by 1,000 votes. What are your thoughts tonight?
We are very humbled by the support from the community, and we're honored to be able to serve for another 4 years. I'm very, very pleased, obviously, but I'm also grateful that I get to serve for the community.
And Al, you were saying earlier that your voters tend to come out a little late, and so you've seen a pattern of maybe not coming out in the lead. Bit of a shock to you today.
It's very much a shock. I mean, I fully expected to be 1,000 votes down, and I'm 1,000 votes up. So what a swing, and it'll only get better from here.
What is your message to voters tonight? We shared earlier that your number one priority going forward is public safety, but what else would you like to tell voters this evening?
Public safety, continuing to bring new jobs and new economic opportunities to the county, and protecting their tax dollars. I'm not going to increase taxes. I made that pledge, and I intend to honor it.
What is the next challenge here? What is the challenge that you face as a county commissioner going forward in this term?
Well, in 2026, we're going to adopt a 20-year growth management plan for the county. And that is something, I'm the only elected official that's been through that process. Want to make sure we get it right, and we grow right, have infrastructure, housing, and economic development for our taxpayers.
Well, congratulations so far. Preemptive congratulations. Looks like, again, you are in the lead tonight with those Spokane County votes. Any final comments for folks watching tonight?
Just sincere thank you to the voters for giving me the opportunity to continue to serve them.
Thank you so much, Mr. French.
Thank you.
Margaret Whitney, we'll send it back to you. We will be efforting a chat one-on-one with Michael Bomgardner here shortly, so we'll be checking in with you in just a little bit.
All right, Amanda Roy live tonight. Amanda, thank you very much.
And now we are getting some new election results as we take a look at some of the statewide races here in Washington.
In the race for the Senate, the Associated Press has called this race for incumbent Senator, the Democrat Maria Cantwell, over Republican Raul Garcia. She has about 60% of the vote compared to Garcia's 40%.
And again, we've been talking at length about the race for Washington governor, Democrat Bob Ferguson and Republican Dave Reichert. As we said, the Associated Press has called this race for Bob Ferguson. He's obviously now with 57%, a pretty commanding lead now over Dave Reichert.
In the race for Washington's lieutenant governor, that features incumbent Democrat Denny Heck and Republican Dan Matthews right now. Heck in the lead right there, pretty sizable lead, but about 57% for Heck to 43% for Dan Matthews.
Washington voters electing a brand new attorney general as well as the current one, Bob Ferguson, running for governor and winning. So this race featuring Republican Pete Serrano and Democrat Nick Brown. You can see Nick Brown there with 56% of the vote tonight.
In the superintendent for public instruction in that race, it features incumbent Chris Reichdahl and challenger David Olson. This office is nonpartisan. Reichdahl right now in the lead by about 9 percentage points or so with 54% of the vote.
This next one, very interesting. We've definitely been keeping our eyes on this one. Washington voters electing a new public lands commissioner and Republican Jamie Herrera Butler running up against Dave Up the Grove. And he right now in the lead with 53% of the vote. Jamie Herrera Butler with 47% of the vote. As we said, she tried to run for her seat in Congress again and lost, and now running for to lead DNR, but appears to be losing as well tonight.
The race for Secretary of State features incumbent Democrat Steve Hobbs and Republican Dale Whitaker right now. Hobbs right now with a sizable lead, about 60% for him to Whitaker's 40% at this hour.
In the election for Washington State Auditor, incumbent Pat McCarthy, a Democrat, running against Republican Matt Hawkins. And again, Pat McCarthy, the Democrat, in the lead right now with 59% of the vote.
Washington Treasurer features incumbent Democrat Mike Pellicciat and Republican Sharon Hannick right now. Pellicciat right now in the lead, 58% of the vote to Hannick's 42%.
Washington voters electing a new insurance commissioner as well for the first time in 24 years after Mike Kreidler announced that he was not running. Republican Phil Fortunato facing Democrat Patricia Kuderer in this race, and she right now in the lead with 57% of the vote.
And voters will elect a judge for the state Supreme Court. Dave Larson is running against Sal Mungia right now, and Larson, well, that race essentially tied right now. Larson has a few more votes at this hour, but they're set at 50-50. This, again, a nonpartisan position, and you can see all the local results in the ticker right there scrolling by at the bottom of your screen.
All right, let's bring back in Kevin Purge as we talk about, I want to talk about the race for Public Lands Commissioner with Jamie Herrera Butler. We talked about this. We were waiting for some of those early returns. Are you surprised? She had a lot of name recognition. Are you surprised that she is not doing better?
Well, actually, no, I'm not. You know, I mean, she has a ton of name recognition. You know, she's popular with moderate Republicans. I think there's a lot of Democrats that might respect her stance when she was in Congress, but she is still a Republican. Right. So, you know, I mean, there is that. What I am curious about is if you were going through all those statewide elections, most of the Republicans were at like the 41%, 42%. You know, she did get better than most Republicans. You know, there was about a 9% swing there. And I'm kind of curious about like, who were those 9% of Washingtonians who were saying like, you know, I won't vote for Republicans for these other offices, but I really like her.
Yeah, you could see some maybe Democrats breaking through who said, you know what, I respect her vote because she voted to impeach Donald Trump. She then got primaried for it, but maybe that came back around and she maybe garnered some more Democrat support in that race.
I mean, perhaps, that makes sense.
Kevin, thank you. All right, Washington's 5th Congressional District candidate Michael Bomgardner is speaking right now with our Amanda Roldy. So let's go back out in the field to take a listen in. Amanda?
Yeah, good evening, guys. That's right. Michael Bomgardner here joining me up on the media stage. Looks like you're leading with the initial votes right now with about nearly 156,000 votes in your favor. spill the tea. What were your initial thoughts to seeing those results?
Just very excited. We thought we'd do well in the election, but you never quite know until the results come in. So we're just, really excited about this position, very grateful to be here. And, I thought hats off to my opponent, Carmela Conroy. I thought she ran a great race, and we're excited to get to work.
Now, Congresswoman Kathy McMorris Rogers introduced you on stage and literally passed the baton to you. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we had, Kathy has served our district for 20 years with such distinction and grace, and excited, big shoes to fill. That'll be a challenge, but we had a supporter that made up that baton, and it was really fun to get it from her, and hopefully I can do as good a job.
Now, what is first on the agenda? It looks like things are leading in your favor at this point, but what's top of mind for you going forward if the election results do prove that you take the lead?
Well, when we get back there, I hope to be part of a team that really works to secure our southern border. I had the opportunity to visit the southern border a few months ago, and before I did, I talked to law enforcement all across eastern Washington. Every single one of them talked about the fentanyl that's pouring into our communities, how it's destroying families. And so, there's no silver bullet to get that border secured, but it's going to take a multifaceted approach, and we do want to work on a team to get that done.
So tonight we have our viewers tuning in. What is your message to them this evening?
Well, I want folks to know that if you voted for me, I'm your congressman, and if you didn't vote for me, I'm your congressman. So I work for all of you, and we're going to do everything we can to work every day to be an outstanding representative. And so I got 775,000 bosses out there, and we're looking forward to do the job for them.
And I have to note that this campaign between you and your opponent has been extremely civil in all regards. I guess, do you think that was maybe an attributing factor to winning voters' favor, or what about that stood out to you?
Well, as I say, politics isn't beanbag, but it's sometimes it does get a little nasty. But I really want to be part of a movement and message that even though that Republicans and Democrats can be adversaries, we shouldn't be enemies. We're all Americans first, and there's a lot of political divisiveness right now, very tribalism, temperature's real high, and hopefully, regardless of who you voted for and who's the winner tomorrow, hopefully everybody can wake up and think, hey, I'm an American first, and think about the unity that our country needs.
How are you feeling right now? This is a pretty big event. You have a lot of support here today. How are you feeling?
Just very grateful. Just very grateful that all these folks came out to support us, and and you hope you live up to and honor their contribution. It's great to have my parents here and our family and the kids, and they're excited to be here. And I'm looking forward to going to a Coug basketball game on Friday night and a Coug football game on Saturday night to celebrate.
There you go. Well, thank you so much, and it looks like things are looking in your favor, so we'll keep an eye on those results. But at this point, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Anytime. Thank you.
Mark and Whitney, we'll send it right back to you guys.
All right, our Amanda Rowley with Michael Bomgardner right now, who's in the lead for that race for Washington's 5th Congressional District.
And we want to turn our attention back to the race for Public Lands Commissioner, Dave Upthegrove right now, who is in the lead right now with 53% of the vote. Looks like he is speaking. Let's take a listen.
To back down from their place at a bar in Stonewall. They didn't know it, but they set a course for every LGBTQ person to live openly, without fear, and with pride. Harvey Milk, the late Harvey Milk, famously said, "You gotta give them hope." Well, tonight, you are proving that this state is a place of hope, a place where we bring every voice to the table to shape the future that we want. I'm humbled to build on the legacy of Washington's own trailblazers, like the late Senator Cal Anderson, who was our first openly gay state legislator. Cal had a vision for a state where everyone belongs, and tonight we're taking his vision forward. In this role, I promise to steward our public lands with that same spirit of inclusion and courage. And together we will manage these lands not just for some, but for everyone in Washington, for all of us who are on this journey towards equality, justice, and a healthy planet now and for the next generation. So let's keep going together. Let's fight for what we believe in. Thank you, Washington.
All right, we just heard from Dave Upthegrove, who appeared to be claiming victory. This race has not yet been called. We're talking about the race for Public Lands Commissioner. He was running against Republican Jamie Herrera Butler. She currently has 47% of the vote. He has 53%, but again, this race has not been called.
Yeah, bringing in Kevin Perchigan, professor of political science at Eastern Washington University. Of all the statewide races, this one seems to be the closest right now.
This one is the closest, yeah, absolutely. I think that this might be the race where if you're a more moderate Democrat who kind of wants to show bipartisanship, this might have been a good race to be. Jamie Herrera Butler made national news when she voted to impeach President Trump, lost her seat in the 3rd district because of that. This might be a place for you to go out there and kind of like show I'm a bipartisan, I'm not just a Democrat.
Yeah.
Does this also speak to crossing Donald Trump and crossing the traditional GOP that will come at your own peril?
Yeah,
is that the message?
I think this is speaking at don't cross Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I haven't seen. We haven't talked about Dan Newhouse yet. Didn't mean to put you on the spot with that, but what happens when you do cross Donald Trump in the Republican Party now?
Yeah. We were just hearing from Michael Bomgardner right there, the Republican winning in the race for the 5th Congressional District at this point. He touched on kind of an atmosphere of tribalism right now.
Yeah.
You teach political science.
We are a highly polarized society right now.
Yeah.
We really are at one of the most polarized times in our country's history. And so, we really are tribal, where it's a straight Republican ticket or a straight Democratic ticket. You saw that on a lot of those statewide races where it was maybe 1% or 2% between those statewide offices. And one of the interesting things is most Americans don't like the tribalism. We really, he was right. We want to move beyond it. But when push comes to shove for voting, what you're seeing is we're still acting that way.
All right, I just looked up the numbers. Dan Newhouse currently in the lead right now with 50% to Jared Sessler with 48%.
Okay.
Thoughts?
Well, that's, incumbents generally do better. Incumbents generally win their elections. Part of being a representative is that you go out there and you provide a lot of community service. You get to know the people in your community. So Newhouse has built up a lot of goodwill in his community, and that might be reflective right now.
Yeah. I want to go back to that tribalism thing because I think a lot of people are interested in hearing it.
Yeah.
Do you see a near future where we move beyond that?
I hope so. No, to go back to what Reichert said, a few speeches ago, he said something really important that I think they thought was a joke, but is really important when he said, don't move. One of the things that we've seen in the past 8 years, especially in the past 4 years, is this massive migration around the United States where people are moving to states where everyone looks like or thinks like them and acts like them. And they're either Republican or they're Democrats. And that's super unhealthy for the well-being of our society. We don't want to get to the tribalism where everyone in Idaho is a Republican and everyone in Washington is a Democrat. That doesn't work well. The society works best when we have two healthy political parties that compete for everyone's votes.
Yeah, and accept the results, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
What does it take then? How do we move forward? How do you do that?
There is no magic bullet. I think the first thing that you have to do, people always say, well, I want to talk about it. I think the first thing you should do is listen. Representative Bomgardner was right that we all have a lot more in common than we do that are different from each other, and so you start finding those common grounds, you start listening to what other people have to say. I think that becomes like the very first step. We didn't get this polarized overnight. It's not like tomorrow we're going to wake up and be, everyone's really happy with each other, but we need to start moving towards that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I understand we have Nick Brown about to speak right now. He's the candidate for Attorney General. He prefers the Democratic Party. He is in the lead right now against Pete Serrano. Again, Nick Brown, let's take a listen.
To defend the rights of Washingtonians, to be their champion, to be their advocate, and I plan on picking up that baton in the days ahead. I also want to give credit to Pete Serrano for running a spirited campaign. I was honored to be on the trail with Pete. He ran a hard campaign, and so thank you for everyone who's run across the state. My promise to all Washingtonians is that no matter what happens in Washington, D.C., that we will be ready. We will be ready to defend your rights, your civil rights, your right to an abortion, your environmental protections, your rights as a consumer. We will be ready. We will be ready to defend you because I know how hardworking the men and women under the Attorney General's office are. And we will be prepared to take on whatever challenge, whether it's in Washington, D.C., or big corporations here, or anybody else. We will be prepared to defend your rights. So we've had a lot of hard work over the last 15 months on this campaign. But the hard work starts tomorrow. We will get ready, we will build a team, and come January, I'll be so honored to be the next Attorney General for this great state. Thank you, everyone.
All right, hearing from Nick Brown as he is talking about claiming victory for the position of Attorney General in Washington. Again, that race has not yet been called, but he is in the lead tonight. We want to turn our attention now as we talk about the presidential race and take a look at how the Inland Northwest voted.
Washington has 12 electoral votes up for grabs, and it looks like they are all going to Kamala Harris with about 59% of the vote in the state of Washington.
All right, let's take a look at Idaho. Appears to be Donald Trump who will be taking the state's 4 electoral college votes. Donald Trump right now with 62% of the voter support in the state of Idaho.
Let's look now at the National Electoral College map right here. These are the latest results from the Associated Press. Kamala Harris has 210 votes. Donald Trump has 230. Remember, the magic number is 270. 270 electoral votes you need to win. For more on how the Electoral College process works, here's our Channing Curtis.
Why does the United States use the Electoral College to pick the president? The Founding Fathers were split. Should Congress choose the president, or should it be left to the people? The use of electors was the solution. When you cast your vote for president, you're deciding which electors will represent your state. The number of electors in each state is determined by how many seats in Congress that state has. And that number is based on the state's population. So, for example, let's look at California. Every state has 2 senators. So right off the bat, that's 2 electors. California, the most populous state, has 52 representatives in the House. So the Golden State gets 54 total electors. Whichever candidate wins California will get all 54 electoral votes. There are 538 total electoral votes, 535 for the states and 3 for the District of Columbia. 48 states are winner-take-all. But Maine and Nebraska give 2 electoral votes to the statewide winner and 1 for the winner of each congressional district. A simple majority of 270 electoral votes is needed to win. If neither candidate gets to 270, the House of Representatives will determine the president, but each state delegation, regardless of the number of electors, must vote as one. So there are only 50 votes up for grabs. The Senate will determine the vice president with a simple majority vote of all 100 senators. The popular vote winner has lost the Electoral College in 2 of the last 6 elections. This has now prompted calls to switch to a popular vote system, but that requires a constitutional amendment.
All right, this is certainly the race that everyone has been watching tonight. We want to bring back in Kevin Perch as we talk about the presidential race. Can we bring up the map there that showed all the different states in the Electoral College as we look at what we have so far? And we're obviously still waiting on some of those really important states. But what are you seeing when you look at this map?
I'm seeing the polling worked.
Okay.
A lot of the polling, there was a lot of questions about what was the polling going to be this year.
Mm-hmm.
The polling right now really looks like what they were projecting it to be. And when I say that, I mean right now, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, they're all too close to call. Like Trump is leading right now, but that doesn't mean he's going to win. This was what the polling was predicting. And so my first thought on this is, the polling worked.
Okay.
That's pretty surprising.
Well, that's very different than what we had before.
Exactly, yeah.
You touched on it a bit, but in terms of paths to victory, it seems like at this point you would rather be in Donald Trump's position than Kamala Harris's position.
Yes.
She has to win Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan in order to see a path to 270.
Yes, she does. She has to sweep that northern tier, the blue wall states. She's going to have to win every single one of those. That's not super easy. Winning all 3 of those states is going to be a trick. Yeah, they one of the things that we found is there's been a change in the electorate over the past 20 years. It used to be that if you were college educated and high income, you were going to be a reliably Republican voter. And that's kind of flipped now, where that means you're probably going to be more likely to be a Democrat. And so in all 3 of those states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, you see a large working class population without that college diploma, and she's going to have to figure out how to reach out to them and get their votes.
Yeah,
we will certainly Keep our eyes on that one.
Yeah,
Very interesting. We have Jay Insley here, who is getting ready to speak right now. Of course, he is no longer running for re-election to be Washington's governor.
I've learned how special, how unique, how inspiring Washington State is, not just to the nation, but to the world. At a moment of darkness and climate change, at a moment of inequality, at a moment of stresses in our health, Washington State is a reservoir of hope. It is a foundation of confidence. It is a team of optimism. And in every regard, Washington State tonight delivered to show that we are a shining light of hope, confidence, and optimism for the future of our state, for this nation, and indeed the planet. That's what we did tonight. And I may note, smaller minds believe that these kind of moments are calling for humility. That is not in my playbook. This is a moment to understand on these initiatives when people came into our fair state and tried to destroy our ability to take care of our senior citizens, to destroy our ability to get money for our schools and bring fairness to our taxes, to destroy our ability to save our grandchildren's future from climate change. We did not just defeat them, we thrashed them, we humiliated them, we dominated them, we hammered them. This was not a win, it was a tidal wave, and the message to those people, of those millionaires who came into our state, you should never come back. We are done with you, and we intend to continue this effort. If I may, just one moment of personal privilege. Each one of these candidates who won these statewide offices, each one of these people who I believe is giving us bigger majorities in our legislature, each one of these people who helped us stand for these legislators, each of them have talent and their own determination, and I thank them very personally. But I have to tell you, I feel kind of good that this is a mark that we're on the right track in the state of Washington. And frankly, I kind of think what I've been able to do to lead this great state, I am confident is going to continue the upward climb of the greatest state in the greatest country, in the greatest planet, in the greatest solar system, in the most beautiful galaxy, and that's the state of Washington. Let's keep this ball rolling. Good luck. Take care.
Governor Jay Inslee right there. And as we track election results tonight, one spot we have not yet received results from is Kootenai County over in Idaho. We are working to learn why it is taking so long to get results and hope to have some numbers for you coming up on KREM 2 News 10 at 10.
Yeah, in the meantime, we want to take a look now at some of the races here in eastern Washington. We begin with Washington's 5th Congressional District again here in eastern Washington. And Republican Michael Bomgardner faced Democrat Carmela Conroy, but now has 60% of the vote. We have already heard Carmela Conroy appearing to concede and Michael Bomgardner appearing to celebrate and accept the baton from outgoing Congresswoman McMorris Rogers, who has decided to retire this year.
All right, in Washington's 4th Congressional District, 2 Republicans vying for that seat. Incumbent Dan Newhouse faces Jared Sessler right now. Right now, Newhouse in the lead with 51%, but it's a close race. Jared Sessler right behind him at 49% right now. Dan Newhouse became kind of a target for former President Trump after the congressman voted to impeach Trump following the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol.
As we take a look at the city of Spokane, voters are deciding on Proposition 1, which would increase the local sales tax by 0.1%. That would help fund community safety endeavors. And you can see right now clearly passing with 58% of the vote. The Spokane mayor, Lisa Brown, has multiple times said that if this resolution fails, that it would mean the city would need to make deep cuts in order to balance its $50 million budget deficit. Now, Spokane County voters also deciding on Measure 1, which would renew a sales tax used to pay for juvenile detention facilities. And that one you can see clearly in the lead as well. That is continuing to get this funding that has already been in place, and 66% of voters saying yes to that one tonight.
Meantime, in Cheney, voters deciding on a bond measure that seeks $72 million for school construction and improvements. As a reminder, bonds need 60% of a 60% yes vote, rather, in order to pass. Right now, it's just shy of that, getting about 59%. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that one.
All right, in Spokane County, voters in District 5 are voting whether to keep incumbent Al French in that position or to elect newcomer Molly Marshall. And you can see this one's fairly close right now. Al French, though, in the lead with 51% of the vote, Molly Marshall with 49%. But again, a very close call. This race has not been called, and certainly we will be keeping an eye on this one.
Spokane County voters are deciding on Superior Court Judge position number 8. This race is between current judge Mala Poland and challenger Brandon Casey right now. Poland right now in the lead by about 10 points with 55% of the vote compared to Casey's 45%.
And another Superior Court judge position is up for election right now. This race for position number 11 features current judge Tim Fennessy and Andrew Van Winkle, who is currently in the lead right now with 52% of the vote against Fennessy with 48%.
All right, I want to bring back in one more time Kevin Perch, professor of political science at Eastern Washington University. We just ran through all those results. Any surprises for you?
No, I was actually, I keep saying no. The one interesting thing for me was the city of Spokane, that proposition. We had talked about it before, like, are we tired of paying taxes or do we want public safety? Looks like we want public safety. That seems to be kind of a major bipartisan theme in the city right now, concerns about what's going on. Otherwise, I'm curious to see what tomorrow's ballots on Al French and that race look like. There's still ballots to be counted there. That seems to be the closest one out of all of those elections. So,
in terms of Prop 1, you're talking about that public safety, tax levy. Yeah. It is interesting to me as well because we've seen local, school bonds fail as of recently.
Yeah, the Cheney bond right now is kind of questionable, and so. Maybe what we're seeing is that we're being very specific about what we're willing to fund right now. And so for the Cheney voters, maybe not the school bond, but we are kind of embracing more public safety. A lot of the themes on a lot of different elections lately have been on public safety, different issues on public safety. So, that might be the winning recipe for increasing taxes.
Also seems that the message got through to a lot of people who have been concerned about public safety, specifically in the downtown core when we talk about homeless solutions and trying to solve those, apparently recognizing that that's going to take money.
Yeah. I think that the city had a major campaign that went out, or maybe not the city, but the supporters of this. If you went and you tried to pay your bill for your utilities online, if you live in the city of Spokane, you saw information about this. They did a very good job of spreading the word of what they were trying to do with it.
All right. Kevin, thank you so much tonight for your analysis.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us here on KREM 2 Plus tonight for live election results as well as analysis.
We also want to thank Eastern Washington University Professor Kevin Perch once again for being with us all night long here.
So thank you very much, Kevin. And the ballots are still being counted at this hour. We know the results still being updated. So make sure to keep it right here on KREM 2 Plus as we bring you those very latest results throughout the overnight hours.
Whitney and I will be back here at 10 o'clock for KREM 2 News, 10 at 10, and we hope to see you then. Good night.